Perfect. Okay. Good evening and welcome to a virtual student clinic. My name is Som. Pleasure to meet you all. And the reason we do clinics here at CPH is to share cases. We look at the pyramid of learning here. When we read and lecture and attend lectures in classrooms, we don't retain as much information because it's passive. Someone's got a microphone on because I'm hearing my echo. Can you please mute your microphone? When we get involved, either through discussion groups, such as we have for our global WhatsApp group and other groups you may be a part of, we share learnings with one another. When we practice by doing it ourselves, which is what case taking is about, we're only really homeopaths when we actually take cases. It doesn't matter if we run a practice or even if we treat friends and family, we're still qualified to the same level. So please don't worry if you're just treating friends and family or if you're running one of the most busiest practices in the world. But qualifications are the same. The way you apply it should be the same. And then if we go on ahead and we help to teach others, our learning deepens further. That's the reason we do these. And at CPH, we do this on a regular basis. We have a global network of students. That gives us a global experience from every country, culture, and way people practice and learning foodstuffs and herbs. So our knowledge is expanding every day. Also, if you do find me speaking a little bit fast, put it on the chat and I'll try and slow it down. When we train at CPH and the way we focus on our cases, we focus on case analysis. Every other college we've experienced so far focus on learning remedies and remedy pictures and fitting a patient to the remedy. We try and fit the remedy to the patient. So in many respects, it's a flip side of the way other people learn from other colleges. Why? Because we want us to look and discover what needs curing. And then saying, out of the things that need curing, which is the most appropriate method to use, of which we teach at least 15. This helps your success rate grow, your confidence grow, your practice go if you run it. But more importantly, it makes us adaptable to any situation that the patients may present in on the day. If we only have one tool, we get. So we teach you to be independent. Don't just do what we do because we mention a remedy, but we give you the tools to empower yourself to do it your way. But we give you a framework and structure to give you the confidence to do it that way. There is no fear. We encourage you to experiment and get excited with the remedies and the potencies you use. So please ask questions as we go through the cases. We've got much to learn. How do we do that? We talk about something at CPH called CEO, cause, effects, and obstacles to cure. As it says here, etiology before symptomology. Always aim to discover the cause. The patient comes to us with their symptoms. Conventional medicine teaches us to talk about symptoms. Doctor, my elbow's hurting. I've got hip pain.
Hello,
I've got
Mother.
gas or IBS. Can somebody please kill that microphone?
Hello, Mum. Huh? Yeah.
Somebody's got their microphone on, please. Can you respectfully turn your mic off? They come to us with the symptoms, and we have this triangle called the 3 T's. The 3 T's of disease. If you look at the bottom left, if there's a trauma, we can easily deal that. Oftentimes, it might be an acute trauma, which we can deal with an acute method. It might be deep-rooted trauma from a long, long time ago. We can use another method called the etiological method to try and lift that and shift that. If it's not a trauma that's happened physically to the body or even mentally, then we look and think, well, is there toxicity in the body through drugs, chemicals, environmental pollutants, toxicity by virtue of the job we may do? I may be a builder working with asbestos. I may be a farmer working with herbicides. I may work in a factory with foodstuffs and nut allergies all around. I may be a mechanic inhaling gas and fumes. So there's various levels of toxicity. I may work in a Google server farm or be a nurse in a radiologist's office with Wi-Fi and radiation around me. Can we determine if that's the cause of the symptom? If it isn't, then it must come from thought, what we call mental and emotion. So if we think about this very, very deeply, every mental emotional thought will ultimately manifest in a physical symptom. As we say here, the symptoms are the signs of the body, disease is the dialogue of the body. It talks to us. And what we must learn to do is to understand the body and listen to the body. Not just for the symptom it's producing, say, well, where is it coming from? Where is it pointing me to? What are the kind of questions I need to be asking to identify the cause and work on curing that? Once we've determined what is the cause of the symptoms, there's a flow chart here. Now, this is taken from page 32 of Ellen's book, Methods of Homeopathic Prescribing. It's a slim, easy read book, but very powerful in the information it contains. And if you do nothing else, buy that book, familiarize yourself with it, refer to it often, and you'll be better than most homeopaths already if you do nothing else other than read that book. In that book, we will learn there are part patient methods, which help us to treat the patient in parts, or the parts of the patient that are having illnesses and diseases, if we cannot get to the cure. If we can, we have what's called whole patient methods that treats the patient completely as a whole person. And you can see 5 listed there. And the flowchart will help us determine the kind of methodology we need. That alone gives us safety, security, framework, and direction. And once we know that, what do we do? There's yet another way to use it. In the book, you'll see something called the 3-legged stool. We further develop that to the 4-legged stool. This is a very short, quick, and powerful technique to use when someone has a clear constitution, has no toxicity, and isn't on any drugs. Rare to find in the Western world. If you go to the third world, not many people take allopathic drugs or environmental pollutants. Then if we could determine the etiology, 1 mental emotional, 1 physical general, and 1 physical particular, what we call keynote prescribing, you'll find that that remedy suits that patient with them 4 indications, and the cure will often be rapid and effective and almost immediate. So that's a very, very powerful thing to do, but you must determine if the patient has a clear constitution. If they're riddled with drugs, if they're smoking, drinking, tobacco, or social drugs, their body will not respond to this method. We also teach here something called the Chinese 5 elements of observing the body. These are observational tools. They teach us what to look for. What we teach here is the body never lies. So when one part of the body is in pain or has an illness, we can look through this. And I'm going to give an example here to walk through something. We'll go to the bottom left. We've got the kidneys. They have a time modality. According to Chinese principles, that is when the energy flows through that organ at that particular time of the day. It doesn't matter which country we live in, our body clock is adjusted to the country we're in. So this observational tool applies anywhere in the world. The bladder also has a time. These are the yin and yang organs, but they govern the genitourinary organs and the bones. They open through the ears, and the emotion related to this is fear. So, for example, if someone comes with an ear issue or a genitourinary bladder, uterus problem, something's happening with their bones, I'm thinking, well, the kidneys aren't functioning. They're probably not reabsorbing minerals. Why? Have they been weakened? Through toxicity or through thought? If through thought, there's going to be some fear in that patient's timeline. So we use and say, right, I need to ask the questions, not how often are you going for a pee, not what is your bone density measure in your blood work, but what's happening in your life. Tell me when this began. Tell me about the things that made you frightened, because we understand the body better than our patients do. This gives us the tools to ask the right kind of questions, and so on and so forth it goes. We'll talk more about this as we go through the cases today. We also have something called the emotional pain chart. You can Google this and download it anywhere. If you want a more deeper description of this, you'll find it in Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. In the middle of the book, there's a whole load of symptoms, and she'll give you the meaning behind it. That alone enables you to ask questions, but understand what the patient is doing. Remember, the body never lies. So when the patient says, I'm fine, no, you're not, because if you're fine, why are you constipated? Why do you have asthma? Why have you got psoriasis? They don't know, they come to us. What we do know. The way we extract that information is in the way we ask our questions. So case taking is absolutely essential. If you consider yourself a great homeopath, don't be a walking memory book of 80 or 100 remedies. Just learn to ask the right questions and be brilliant at getting a timeline that will tell you what happened in that patient's life story, which took them from health to ill health. Then all we do is help reverse that process and restore their health. So wrapping it together, we do homeopathy here, and what we teach here at CPH. We also supplement it with flower essences, meditative provings, tissue salts, bowel no-sodes. But here we also talk about herbs, nutrition, and supplements. So you almost get a naturopathic education. This is what we call holistic homeopathy. We've got to nourish the body with the right ingredients and give it the right message to the vital force so it can fix itself. So if you think of it simplistically, the nutrition and the herbs are the ingredients, and the homeopathy is the recipe. It gives the instruction how the body can utilize it. We put it all together. So when we put it all together, we analyze the case, we look for the cause, they come to us with effects, we identify if there are any obstacles to cure. We select a method, then we choose rubrics according to that method selected. And there's something we do here unique at CPH. We do not teach a single method that makes us choose more than 9 rubrics. Now that's quite a phenomenon in its own way, because it really focuses on the rubrics that matter. Not let's do 10 or 20 or 15 or 17 and hope for the most fitting remedy, because if we do that, we're just listing symptoms and we don't know which symptoms are the effects of the cause and which symptoms are the effects of some other effect which has a knock-on effect or the side effects of a drug. So we confuse all our symptoms together. Our methods give us clarity to see what are we looking for. Then we repertoire and then we differentiate the remedies, and this is how we learn our materia medica here. We'll discuss this later today. And the modalities and sensations between remedies, better for this, worse for that, will help us to tailor make that remedy for that patient. So this is what we call individualized medicine. If we just say you're a calc carb person or you're a phosphorus person, well then, I don't know, 1/15 of the world might be that way. We don't know. That's not individualized enough. There's a time and a place for constitutional prescribing, and that's when someone is not ill, they have a clear constitution, no obstacles, and that is used then to maintain their health, not to restore their health once they become unwell. Key point there to remember. Then we select the remedies, the potency, and the frequency. If we just select a remedy, that's not a prescription. It's like someone saying, take a paracetamol or an Advil. How much, how often, and when? That makes a prescription. And then we say, how are we going to support the body? Nutrition, supplements, herbs, maybe go for a walk, maybe socialize, maybe do some yoga, meditation. This is all part of the healing arts. And you should feel free and confident to be able to suggest that. We are not the healer, the patient is. So we need their buy-in and involvement to restore their health. We did not get them unwell. We will not get them well. They will. Our job is just to understand their journey. Can somebody turn their mic off, please? We're getting another echo. Then when we do a follow-up appointment, this is where a lot of homeopaths get stuck. What do I look for in the follow-up? Please don't become symptom-taking secretaries and just ask about all the other symptoms you took on the first appointment. That's not what we do. We ask them for how they're feeling, what's happened in their life that's changed from when we last saw them. Because if things happen, a birth, a marriage, a divorce, a job changes, a family member dies, that changes their energy, it shifts their vital force, and the energy is tied up elsewhere. So that doesn't mean the remedy has stopped working. They no longer need that remedy because they've moved. Or they may regress back to a period in their time, in their life, where they've experienced another illness, what some people call an aggravation. We call it a return of old symptoms even. Oh, I had eczema 20 years ago. Good, you're on the healing journey. But now I need to change your medication and tell me what happened in that time in your life. So they're the kind of questions we ask at a follow-up. We might take a few symptoms, but it's more about their well-being and where they're at and things that come to mind and things they may have forgotten to tell us. Sometimes it takes more than one appointment to build the right kind of rapport with someone where they can truly open up. On that note, also remember, if someone is suppressed and doesn't answer and give us answers that we want, that is also a sign, and we can repertoire for that. Mind answers aversion to. So we can find things. When someone doesn't talk in the closed, we can use rubric, mind, emotion suppressed. So we can always learn even when they say nothing. So never ever feel disempowered. Okay, we've got 4 interesting cases today, and hopefully Grace will be the first to go. I know she's familiar to some of you there. She's also a CPH student on the certificate level. That's level 1 of 3 levels to get to professional status with us, and you'll see just how we teach the application from a very early stage. Grace, are you with us this evening, and is your microphone on?
I am. Good evening.
Good evening. Right, what we're going to try and do, because I've talked for a short while here, we've given a half-hour block, but it'd be great if we can do the cases within about 20 minutes. Why? Because it helps us to focus our mind and focus on the key elements of the case that are important. If you're ready, Grace?
Yeah.
Over to you, okay? Fire away.
Okay, so my patient is a 25-year-old male. He's tall, athletic, strongly built. He was dressed in pretty casual clothes, lighthearted and jovial. I will note that he is a family member. So when I was taking his case, it was at his and his wife's request for both of them. It was in a more casual setting. So I did make a note that He's very jovial, so he was making jokes, but he also at some points was more focused on the TV, because once we started getting into like his emotional status and like growing up and memories, that's when he was more averse to answering questions. And his wife was present, so she was able to give some more answers. So some of the information was from her. So the two things that he requested was he's had tinnitus since age 5 due to being around loud noises, and he's had offensive gas since birth. So those are the two things that were presenting. He emotionally had difficulty recalling painful emotional experiences. He seems to not really carry the load of emotional experiences, but also I think deeply suppressed, which is why I'm having trouble with his case. So the tinnitus has been in both ears since he was 13 years old, is when it began around 5, got bad at 13 from guns and construction work. The tinnitus is worse for loud noises. If he's spinning like in a circle, it brings on headaches, and he thinks it's connected to the tinnitus. And as far as the gas goes, there's no pain unless he's trying to hold it in. It's throughout all day. It's worse after he eats, and passing gas relieves it. And he doesn't have any trouble with constipation or diarrhea, but infrequently, sometimes he'll find like poop after farting, and it's generally related to what he's been eating. So looking at his timeline, he had RSV when he was little, and it was treated with steroids. Age 11 to 15, he started experiencing a lot of broken bones. And he described his dad
Hi, Grace.
as,
Sorry, just before we go on, and for the benefit of everybody else who's going to present to this evening, when we have abbreviations, we have a global audience. So would you mind telling us what RSV is, please?
yes, it is a respiratory infection that, from my understanding, starts off as a cold, but then progresses worse. Children can die from it, and it's generally treated with steroids.
Okay. So yes, just a caution for everybody that when we write in cases up, it's always good to not have abbreviations, because obviously everyone has a different command of the English language, different countries. But thank you for telling us that. Okay. Fire away.
Okay. So yeah, from 11-15, several broken bones. He described his dad as angry. His dad was also busy with work a lot, not around a ton. And described his dad as physical with discipline. Some people might call it abusive though, but he didn't use those terms. Like, he remembers his dad hanging him on the wall by a nail over something. But he generally just laughed at any of the discipline. Age 16 through 20, broke a foot. There's still some weakness at that site. He had his tonsils and wisdom teeth removed all in the same week. It was on heavy antibiotics. During that phase, he also described what was like the most traumatic event of his life is he and his girlfriend confessed their sexual, what he called sin, to his parents and girlfriend's parents. But he said it went well. The parents were great and understanding. And then his wife later told me that he also had recreational drug use in high school.
Okay.
21 to 25, he married. His marriage had a lot of troubles. They almost divorced because they moved away from family, and his wife was going through some health issues. He started attending a sexual addiction recovery group, which he said was a really great time and really helpful to have that accountability. Lots of transitions between jobs, housing, school. At 24, his wife gave birth to their first son and almost died in childbirth. So currently 25, was living with his parents and family while he helped to build his siblings' houses, but his parents treated his wife terribly, and so they moved into their own apartment recently. He says his dad will blow up on him and accuse him and his wife of things that are not true. He said he feels really sad, disappointed, angry, and this sense of torn loyalty because his dad used to be his best friend. He has a reoccurring tooth infection. So a lot of emotional going on. For family history, on his dad's side, his grandmother had multiple sclerosis and Crohn's disease. Grandfather died of cancer early. Alcoholism runs in the family. His mom's side, his mom has lupus, and his grandfather also died from cancer. He doesn't remember what, but maybe lung cancer.
Okay. Let's focus here. Now I'm going to pause for a second and I'll tell you why, Grace. Just as a policy, as a college, when we have somebody who's known to us and we present their case, we will not share this recording on YouTube, okay?
Okay.
So, just so you know, and that's not just for you, it's for everybody else listening. Sometimes people tell us in advance, I'm doing a friend's or a relative's case. Not a problem with that at all. What it means in this instance is, if I'd known earlier, I would have stopped the recording, we would have continued this case, and then we would have continued the recording afterwards. But in this instance, for everybody listening, this part of the consultation, I'm going to edit, delete out, and carry it on afterwards, okay? So when you hear the video on YouTube later on, we will cut out Grace's case because the patient is known to her. The same advice I'll give to anybody else who's presenting later. If the patient is known to you, please disclose it. We protect confidentiality. We can even put it on listed on YouTube, but we can't stop anybody accessing it if it gets hacked. So we will not do that as a policy. I hope all of us can appreciate that. It doesn't take away from our learning right now, but it means that we will not be able to share it in the public domain. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, thanks for explaining that.
That's fine. So that's good for everybody listening, to be fair. Okay. That's just the way we do things here at CPH. If it was in a closed classroom and it wasn't going to go public, not a problem. So for those of us listening, we're privileged because we're doing it live today. I understand with the timings all around the world, it's not possible for everyone to learn this, but we'll share what we can. But if it's disclosed, that's just the nature of the beast and the nature of the homeopathy we do. Right, before we go any further into the next slide, there's a lot we can take from here. So Grace, do you have any thoughts, or do you want me to put some commentary on it?
So this is a little bit of an ethical question. He came to me with tinnitus and the offensive gas since birth, but taking the case, I can see a lot of suppressed emotions, and then his current emotional state that I highlighted with his family is weighing on him hugely. So looking at like the two symptoms I have, I repped off of those as well, but then there's also a huge emotional component that I repped, and that's what I need the help with, is deciding like, what was that?
You're to be applauded because, you know, as far as we're concerned at CPH, you're only just starting on the first level of our 3-level course, right? And you're already that aware that symptoms are just symptoms. There's a mental emotional cause. Very few people actually learn that even after being qualified. So well done you. What we're seeing here, we've got this guy. He's making joke of things. You know why? Because the reality hurts. And you said yourself, there's a lot of suppression here. Because facing my past, I don't like. So the best way I can handle it is, if I don't laugh about it, I'm going to be crying. But I'm so suppressed, I won't let myself cry. I won't let myself feel what I need to feel so I can heal. I'll say that one again, ladies and gentlemen. I need to let myself feel what I feel so I can heal. As we say here, you've got to feel it before you can heal it. So when we're closed down in our emotions, we're not ready yet to heal even. So we need to unsuppress them emotions. And that's a rubric: mind, emotion, suppressed. So we learn even when someone's shut down. Then when we go through it, he had difficulty recalling the emotional experiences. That's telling us he's closed and doesn't want to talk about it. That's fine. There's a fantastic remedy in the Materia Medica, the #1 unsuppressor in the world, carcinosin. That doesn't mean we're remedy chasing. When we do the cases today, we're going to talk methodology and structure, but we're also going to throw a lot of therapeutics out there, because sometimes we need to learn therapeutics as a quick fix or to build up our therapeutic knowledge. And we'll cover that in a bit as well. So you said already he might be heavily suppressed. So well done for identifying that is there. Strong religious faith. There's a rubric for that. Religious affectations. Is he guided by it? Is he paranoid about it? Is he fanatical about it? We need a bit more depth to that. But he says that anchors him in life. Because if I can't turn to my own father, who's abusive, I might as well turn to the Holy Father. I'm assuming he's of a faith that believes in the Holy Father. Right. So he doesn't, the emotional situations are relevant. No, you're right, because they bloody hurt. That's why. So he's got tinnitus in both ears, and he said from gunshots and construction work. Okay. I'm assuming he wasn't in construction work at the age of 13.
His dad owned a construction business, so he was around it quite a bit.
But even then, they normally wear mufflers on the ears and all sorts, right?
He claims he did not.
Yeah. So when we go back to our chart, let me just go back a second, right? Let's go back to our 5 elements. This is where this is so invaluable in our learning. Now, if we look at this, the body never lies. Always remember this. I say it again and again. We've got the opening down below in the left hand. See here it says ears. The kidneys and the bladder open through the ears. And the ears are related to fear. That's easy. Put an F in front of the ears, you have fear. So this guy was a very frightened child. And guess who he was frightened of? The man who pinned him to the wall with a nail. He was so frightened, he didn't want to hear the abuse, the screams, or anything. Shut down. So his ears started ringing to block out the noise. When we study homeopathy this way, it's very revealing to how we see them. Those at CPH in our audience might be screaming out, yes, and we know that, but not all of us do. But it took us time to learn this and apply this that way. So we get where the ears come from. related to fear. The body never lies. So if I'm that scared, I definitely don't want to feel my emotions again, because now I'm a grown man. As you said, big, strong, strapping young man. Why would I want to go back to a time when I was a fearful little boy? I don't. So I want to close it down. Don't want to talk about it, make light of it, and say, okay, no, it isn't. So there's a deep rooted emotional link there. So we have that. What is the cause of the fear? Let's go back to this here. So that's there, okay? So, and he's holding it in and he's got the frequency. When you say frequency, is the frequency to poo or to pee?
The fart.
Fart. So he's full of gas and bloat. You know why? Because you can't stomach, he's full of anger, gas and bloat. And that can go to remedies. The remedy chases in it say, well, that's lycopodium, they're full of gas and bloat. That's fine, they are. But what caused that gas and bloat? He can't digest what's going on. He still can't stomach it. All that pressure is building up inside him. Something's going to rupture, something's going to give. We can tell that. Now, you talked about this here called ketosis pilaris. Is that something called keratosis pilaris with the skin?
Yes, I think I spelled it wrong.
Oh, that's okay. So if it's keratosis pilaris, it doesn't matter what the allopaths give. There's a skin irritation. Guess why? Somebody is getting under his skin. But now if we look back to the emotional chart again, look what the skin tells us. The skin is over here in the bottom right. The lungs and the large intestines, the yin and yang organs, they govern our respiratory tract, our skin and the hair. They open through the nose. So when people come with these kind of symptoms, we know there's an element of grief. He's sad and he's fearful. That's how his life is turning out. And it's manifesting in the skin. That's what this case is telling us. His body is talking to us. Doesn't matter, even if he doesn't, and he's watching the TV and he's laughing. His body's telling us what's going on. Then when we look at his timeline, he had a respiratory tract infection. We just said the lungs and large intestine are riddled with grief. He was so sad as a kid, he couldn't breathe. He got infected. His immune system was down because he was scared, full of fear and worry, got infection. Suppressed his kidneys further with steroids. The adrenal gland was suppressed. They sit on top of the kidneys, adrenal, adjacent to the kidneys. And so his journey to tinnitus began. More loud noises. If you're already frightened, you're going to be startled easily. That might be a rubric. Mind startled. Mind noises, aversion to. That's a bit of a nux vomica state, but nux vomica is a great liver remedy. And we hold our anger in our ears. I'm angry, I'm frightened, and I'm sad. As a young little boy. So this is what analyzing the case does. Forget the rep work right now, ladies and gentlemen. The first page of a case tells us all we need to know. And if we apply some framework to it, the prescription will and should write itself. So it doesn't matter what remedy comes out. If we get the process right and the inputs right, the outcome will lead us to the right remedy for this case. Does that make sense, Grace?
Yes.
Right. So that's what we've seen from the first page. Often we do this all the time at CPH. People say, right, I want to get to the prescription and show you my prescription. It doesn't matter, because if you do it right, the prescription is going to be phenomenal. But it's this understanding that we learn from. That's the depth of how we take the case to bits. And look, he was so angry, he could have snapped. And all through his case, broke this, broke that, broke that, broke that. That's a syphilitic miasm. His body's self-destructing. You know why? Because the person he wants to destroy is his father. But he can't do that. Because the religious thing will say you respect your elders. So instead of exploding outward, you implode inwards. We're seeing that here. So that is the life story of this gentleman. Then talk to me about this confessing a sexual sin to parents and girlfriends. What was the sexual sin he did?
He and his girlfriend both went to the same church, and I believe their families were well respected in it, and they were having sex together. And
Sex before marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they confessed it. So they absolved themselves, but then and the parents were, you said, quite forgiving, etc. So then he started recreational drugs. Better to get high than live in reality. I want to escape from reality. Isn't that interesting? And the sexual addiction, was that for him or for his wife?
It was for him.
So he's manifesting this outlet through sex. Okay. Is he still a sex addict, or has he been treated for that and is he better for it now?
Doing much better. Still some residual issues or addiction, but doing better.
Question there would be, addicted to having it with the partner he's with or with other people?
From my understanding, it's porn.
Right, porn addiction. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not addict as in having affairs, extramarital affairs, things like that, but more addicted to porn, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we'll do a little bit of therapeutics now for the people listening in, because that's a fantastic one. And it's unfortunately with the internet generation, we're going to see more and more of this as we do cases all around the world, right? So it's important. We have the cause for it. There's a way of taking out sexual frustration that's been pent up, but it could just be curiosity, and it's an addiction like gambling and anything else, to be fair. So when we think about addiction, one of the number one, we talked about this on Ohana on our CPH group actually, but we'll do it here again for people who are not part of that. If we, the number one, sorry, lost my thread for a minute. The number one thing for addiction is saccharine knowledge, because the brain is addicted to sugar, right? So that's a good remedy for breaking addictions of any kind. For porn addiction specifically, you'll find a remedy called formic acid. That's a good one. So is Staphylococcus aureus. So that's three therapeutics books. For everyone listening in, they're very useful remedies for porn addiction. You know, I see in a few cases nowadays, and you think, crikey. And we're seeing more cases of impotence coming up in younger and younger men, low sperm counts. This is the world we live in. So we may as well get used to treating it, okay? So that is something that can be helped. There is, if someone has a high sex drive, needs to have it. That is the psychotic miasm, overproduction, and the kidneys already sit under the psychotic miasm. We'll just come to this in a second. This is where we put things together, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go back to these slides. Bear with me. Psychotic is when the body has an overproduction, heightened, too much. So it's too much porn. And as we know, the miasmatic nosode for that is medurinum, also taken from the gonorrhea nosode, right? So that is linked to too much sexual activity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that is.
If someone is addicted to effects of masturbation by watching porn, Staphylococcus aureus, as we said, and there's another remedy, it's very rare remedy, oreganum. Oreganum is almost as specific for people who are driven by sexual desire. So look that up. You might find it in some materia medicas, not others, and share it amongst the groups that you're in. So that's a nice one for people driven by this. And like I said, in this day and age, we're going to see a lot more of this in cases coming up. So that's just on the side. And this is why we say, ladies and gentlemen, when we do these cases, it's not just this case in particular, but homeopathy in general that we improve on as we go. Okay, so we were here. So what we've also seen is a kid that was abused either by his father or he witnessed a lot of abuse, right?
Yeah, I would say by his father.
Right, but he put it down to discipline. He forgave his father because he thought he was being disciplined. If I get an adult and I pin him to the wall with a nail, something quite biblical about that, but that's not discipline.
Yeah, I agree. And I see that a lot with abuse in children is they say physical, oh, my parent was physical or had anger outbursts, but it was never abuse. And then they describe abuse.
Yeah, that's grooming. That's groomed to up so that my belief in abuse is something else, but what I'm doing at home is discipline. Well, it's still abuse. You're harming somebody else, you're abusing them. So interesting on the definitions. And around the world, definitions for abuse change and vary. We're a global college. In some countries, beating kids and chastising them is allowed. In others, it is illegal. In the UK, you cannot do that. You go to jail. So every country has a different rules. That's one thing of country rules. But how a human treats another human and how that impacts that human. There's something about intent and effect. The parent's intention could be, I'm disciplining, I slap my child, I scold my child. If that kid goes to bed crying every day, the kid is suffering the effects of being admonished, reprimanded. And if one of our very own tutors, Deb Harding's here, she's an expert with the English language. She does a word of the week. I'm sure she'll teach us more about words like that later on as well. So the effect that it has on the person is what we care about. Because that person is our patient, not the rest of them. Made more complex when we know the patient themselves as well. So we have to have our ethical boundaries. Am I a caring friend or relative, or am I a homeopath? So we've got to be mindful to stay objective and not be subjective. If we find we're being too subjective, we owe it to the patient to refer them to somebody else. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, when we take on family cases, we may not wish to take on people we know because sometimes we don't need to know everybody's ins and outs in their life. It might affect how we view them and our relationship with them. So sometimes it's best to say, I'm going to refer you to my friend. So that protects your friendship and relationships And so sometimes you might reconsider treating the people who are nearest and dearest to you to maintain the relationships you have. That's a choice that every individual makes. Okay. I think we've done this one, ripped it to shreds. Shall we go to the next slide?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I hope that was all useful for everybody listening in. That's how we deconstruct the information we extract. Right, fire away. So what are we doing?
So case analysis, there's high toxicity in him. Didn't mention his timeline, but the farmhouse with his parents was moldy and it was on a wheat field sprayed with glyphosate. He grew up with a standard American diet, which is SAD. It's the acronym. And then there's all sorts of toxins and fumes in construction work. Also deeply suppressed emotions, like we talked about. He's unable to articulate emotional situations from his childhood. He also stated that he didn't see how any of his childhood or emotions could be connected to the physical.
Okay.
And then also he did ask for help with the tinnitus. He's had multiple broken bones. He also has a stability issue in the knee. So because of those, based on the Chinese 5 elements, we're looking at psychotic or tubercular miasms.
Okay.
So cause affects obstacles, causes trauma from noises, suppressed emotions. The effects is the tinnitus, bowel issues, and unaware of his emotions. Obstacles identified were the toxicity, emotional maturity to handle his emotions. I'm not sure if he's ready to handle them. And he's very distracted by his responsibilities as a husband and a father and trying to protect his wife right now.
Okay.
Maintaining cause is he's living in the same town with his parents, although no longer in the same house. And it's highly stressful. He's also working with his dad and his siblings. Anxiety and a sense of torn loyalty between his wife and family. So I went a little off the template because these are the 2 reps that I came up with. The first one, the longer one, that's based on things he told me from taking the case, but the one on the right is more of what I was picking up on and from analyzing the case. So the top ones, based on what he was saying, are on the left. It's, how do you say that one? Lycochess and lycopodium.
Yeah, lacosis. Okay.
Lacosis, thank you. And staph.
Yeah.
And then on the right, it's still lycopodium, staph, and carcinosin. So looking at prescribing, I was going to start with a toxicity detox. Justification is his living situation, the construction work, vaccines, antibiotic abuse, and drug abuse.
Okay. So help us understand what's in your toxicity detox.
I'm trying to remember. It's CPHs. So it's the
Okay.
carcinosin one. It's thuja, silica.
Okay.
And I know there's at least a 4th one, but I'm forgetting it.
Okay. For the benefit of those who may not remember that or who are not at CPH, if you do toxicity detox and you repertoire using Murphy's, you have a chapter called toxicity. You can do toxicity elements from, toxicity drugs, allopathic side effects from, toxicity from vaccines. There's a vaccines chapter. When you combine it all together, the key remedies that keep coming up time and time again, you're going to have nux vomica, you're going to have arsenicum. Arsenicum is a poison anyway, it's a toxin. You're going to have carcinosin. And if you read your MAP Med, it doesn't always come up in your rep work. But when you read your MAP Med, carcinosin in bold italics in Murphy's Material Merit, it says ailments from vaccinosis. So when you've got Nuxcarc through your silica, that's a very powerful detox just in itself, okay, using remedies. We have other remedies such as clay and brown rice, which help to detox and draw out toxins from the body. They're meditative provings. So that can add and enhance that. You've written 30C, not a problem. Again, abbreviation 2D, I'm assuming you mean twice a day.
Correct, twice a day.
Okay, fine. Okay. Normally when we try and detox the body, especially when we're trying to detox the liver, if you use the Chinese 5 elements, the time of the liver is 5 o'clock. Let me just see if I can escape from this in a second. Give me, right, go back here. We'll share this. You'll see up here on the top left, the liver's time is 1 to 3 in the morning, right? That's when the liver replenishes itself. And the liver is what we're trying to detox. So when we give things at CPH, we say, try and take this just before bed and you go to sleep. Because the remedies are energetic information. Why? Because we succuss, there's nothing left, just a frequency that the water holds. Our body is 2/3 water. Put a pill in your mouth, it will dissolve in and vibrate all around us. And let's do it at the time to align it. So you can time your remedies with the body clock here, the organ clock, if you so wish. And that enhances the impact of the remedies you use. So let's go back to the case. Okay, so we were here, right? So we've got the detox there, and then you're giving Natmio once a day, any time in the day, or just any time they wish to take it.
I was going to say just once a day, probably best at night, because it's just unsuppress the emotions. And this is where I started going a little bit off of the top
Yeah,
remedies that
it's not anywhere in your rep.
Sorry, say that again.
It's not anywhere in your rep work, is it, this remedy?
Right. No, and so that was going to be my question to you, because I know it's great for suppressing emotions, and then reading the NAPMR and my materia medica, it did sound like him a lot. And there is a note that I didn't put on the slide that he said he craves salt all the time,
Yep.
which is another keynote of NAPMR.
Good. Well, so if you put that down and put it in your rep work, said mind salt craving, it might have altered your rep work accordingly, right?
Yeah, I didn't know
Sometimes
about that.
when we take rubrics, ladies and gentlemen, there's a method called the totality method. You take the totality of symptoms, but you focus on things in the case that are strange, rare, and peculiar, or unique to that individual. I might have had an abusive father. You might have had an abusive father. We might all be having trouble with our knees and broken hips. But if you're the only one craving salt, that, as we say here, is the difference that makes the difference, that makes the remedy the unique one for that patient. Does that make sense? So when we capture that information, we're mindful of these things and techniques as we go forward. We're like, okay, that is what I need to take care of. A keynote, but what we call SRP, strange, rare, and peculiar in this case. That I've done hundreds of abuse cases, hundreds of grief cases, but this one is craving salt. Food chapter, food, salt, desires, bang, there's a rubric for you. Little tucked away one, and see what impact it makes to your rep work. So all cases are an opportunity for us to refine our rep work further and further. Nothing wrong with that, Mule. Then you talked about lycopodium. I can see it's there in your rep work there, right? So on your rep work here, go on.
Sorry, so this one might be a bit more therapeutic as well, because I know it's great for the gastro, but it did also in the materia medica talk about domination, flatulence, and it's the tinnitus. But again, that is more therapeutically.
Okay, now let's talk about this for everybody concerned today. It's good. It is good for the gastro. The gastro is an effect of his emotions that are suppressed. They've turned inwards. So when a patient presents with remedies, with symptoms to us, ladies and gentlemen, what that patient is telling us is that this is how I do grief. This is how I manifest abuse in my body. Do you see what I mean? And we all manifest it differently. Someone may come up with skin issues. Some may come up with asthma. Some may lose their hair. Some may come and pee themselves too much. Every person manifests things differently. So when the patient comes, that's what, as Ellen keeps telling us, the patient is your teacher. They teach you how wonderful this human body is and how everybody is unique in the symptoms they present with. So we're not trying to treat symptoms. We're trying to treat the cause. Why? What does Hahnemann tell us? When the vital force has been shifted, it manifests in disease. So the remedies don't treat the disease. They help the vital force restore itself. Once it's on its own healing path, it will then rectify the rest of the ailments. This is very important because when we're new in our homeopathic journey, we tend to cherry pick. I'll give this remedy for this, and I'll give this remedy for that. That's fine. But if I know that this remedy sets the chain reaction in motion, that these little obscure physical particulars, once the vital force is set up, they will sort themselves out. So that's not just to yourself, Chris, it's to everybody listening. That is how we apply homeopathy. And that enables us to be confident and assured and self-assured, but then also to reassure our patients that don't worry, you're in good hands. We know what we're doing. We're working at the cause part of the case, not the effects part of the case. You did well to identify the toxicity and remove it. So well done. That's a good case. And I think you did this again here. Lots of other things. I'm not sure where this came from, but that's fine. There's some rep work there. I think I did a simple one called the classical method on your case. Takes 2 seconds to put it together. We had a patient here, and when we do our rep work, ladies and gentlemen, and we focus on the mental emotionals, if we read down the case here, the rubrics, that should describe the case. If it doesn't, we haven't selected the right rubrics. So the first sanity check is, do these rubrics identify the case as I understand it? If they don't, maybe my understanding is different. That's what these groups and learnings are for. If it kind of makes sense where we're at, look, we've got the rubric here of religious expectations. And then if they do, then we read across and we rank it by weighted. So it does the scores across the top for us. And I've only used 5 rubrics. That should reassure us that we don't need 10, 20 rubrics. And I haven't even looked at his gas and I haven't looked at his ears. These are the effects. What is the cause? And if you look, you've got the same kind of remedies coming together. Carcinosin, Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus is huge for abuse and humiliation. You can see them highlighted in blue here. And then you've got Lycopodium and Ignatia. So depending on how you do your rep work, you're going to come up with different remedies. But you'll notice that the same 3 or 4 remedies come up. And the way we teach at CPH, we say, take the top couple of remedies, 3, and differentiate them, and then find the one that's most suited in the modalities and other things. It might be Natmure, it might be Lycopodium. I can't make that decision because I didn't take your case. And that's where you are empowered as a homeopath. If you think, well, you know what, I'm going to give it all. Nothing wrong with the combo. The body will take what it needs. There's no law in the world that says you must pin your whole life to one remedy and that's it forever and ever. No. If you want to give carcinosis, Staphylococcus aureus, Lycopodium, Natmure, go for it. You're the conductor of the cause of the case here. Take what you need from it. The way you learn your materia medica, if you read across, we've got this mind religious affectations, right? Affections. People say, oh, let's pray before we do, so they get heavily spiritual with us. If we read across, we have a remedy called anacardium, the marking nut. Very important remedy for people who have religious mania, religious affectations, or religious references. And there's another one, if you look across, veratrum album, verat. We often use that for violent outbursts, often to do with vomiting, diarrhea, or poisoning. Get things out the body. Exorcism, for using kind of words. So we look at these powerful remedies like anacardium and verat. They have violent reactions. That's the theme of these kind of remedies. So we learn our materia medica by doing our rep work, picking up rubrics, and learning them across. So we've just learned today that if someone is overly religious, we've got a couple of remedies there that might help them. In this case, it's not so much, but we learn every time we do rep work, we learn something new and we strengthen our materia medica knowledge this way. This should cause us to go back to our mat med, read upon these remedies, add it to our repertoire, make a little note, tuck it away in your therapeutics that if I get this patient, I can do this then and say, right, come and see me later for a full consultation. Grace, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I appreciate it.
Good.
It was getting hard to separate the 2 symptoms and physicals that he came to me with from, well, actually, let's look at the emotions that are causing it.
You might consider adding carcinosin, but carcinosin you're giving because it's in your detox prescription, right? You're giving Nux Carc through your silica. So you can look at that and say, I'm already giving carcinosin. Good. That takes that out of the equation on this rep work, doesn't it? So you can be safely assured that my top ranking remedy, I'm already giving it. I might be giving it for ailments from vaccination and toxicity, but it's going to help my case. It's the #1 indicated remedy in your case. You're already thinking about Lycopodium because that has the keynotes of the gas and bloat with all the anger suppression you've had on the previous slide. Here on the right-hand side, right? And look behind it is Staphylococcus aureus carcinosin. So you see the same trio of remedies are coming up again and again. That should reassure you that your rep works in the right direction. So you should feel good about that. You're new into doing things the CPH way. You're just a few modules in, and look where it's taking you with a very complex case, which appears complex at the first front of it with tinnitus, right?
Yeah, I know exactly. So you said that because Cars is in the toxicity, but it's 30C twice a day instead of a stronger potency. Is there?
Right. Talk about potency. Now, he's had this. He's 25 years old. He's had it his whole life. So when someone's had something for a long, long time as a chronic condition, you're perfectly within your remit to go low and slow. If you read Alan's book, it can be anything from 30C all the way to 10M. And when you do a follow-up and he's responding well, and this is for everybody listening in, that when we decide that we want to go higher because he's responding well, there's no material change, but he's getting better and better, you don't have to change a remedy for the change's sake. You simply use another potency. But we don't tell our patients we're going higher because conventional medicine, when you increase my dose, that means I'm not getting better. So what we say in the homeopathy at CPH, we say we're going to now work deeper on a deeper level. Patients love that word because it means that they're healing, and now we're going to get deep into their healing. And when you give him carcinosin, he might unsuppress. He might have violent outbursts of anger from all that suppressed stuff that broke his bones and legs earlier as a child. And once that goes, and that will stop him being fearful. And once the fearful goes, the ears will stop ringing. It's amazing when the body shows us how it's healing through the symptoms when they come and then when they disappear or when they subside and get less bad. So look for these improvements. Then you ask him, how are you feeling within yourself? If he's a bit more open up, you think, oh my gosh, he's unsuppressing. That's the miracles of carcinosis. And if you look up the rubric, mind, emotion, suppressed, you've got Couple of remedies there that tell you that suppression of emotions, carcinosis, staphylococcus. So these are great remedies for unsuppressing. And there's lots of zeros behind it. So you pretty much narrow your materia medica. If someone's suppressed, give them carcinosin. How easy is that for anybody out there? I remember when we used to treat homeopathy years ago, people say, well, I want to unsuppress the whole world. I want to unsuppress my husband. He doesn't talk to me. It's not going to turn them into somebody sitting there with a box of Kleenex crying all the time, but it allows them to get in touch with their own emotions that they've buried deep inside and they're not dealing with. So, okay. Grace, very well done. And just for everyone listening in, this is not going to be a long night. The first case and the introduction are always the longest because now we've got to head into it. We will whiz through the cases because we understand the way we think now and apply. But before we do, if Sarah or Francesca's around, are there any questions from the chat room at all on this case or anything in general that we can address here? Sarah or Francesca, can you unmute your mic and talk to me?
Not at this time, Sam, but everybody is saying how brilliantly Grace has done with this case.
Yes, she has. Grace, really well done. You're so new in and you're grasping it already. Long way to continue. Okay, well done. Let's go to the next case. Lisa, are you with us this evening? If you
Yes,
are,
I am, Sam.
hey Lisa, how are you? Good.
Hey, good. Thank you for doing this when it's not in the middle of the night for me.
Good, right. Let's crack on then because it soon will be for me.
Okay.
Let's keep moving. Fire away.
So this case is SD. She is a friend of mine, and I came to know recently that she was perhaps on her way out, so we should go see her. She lives close by. So for a long time, she's had slow onset, sort of partial paralysis. She has dizziness that causes falls, throbbing pain in hips, arms, in the extremities, a little constipation. She has some unknown infection. She's extremely kind. She's a super adventurer. She used to be, loves to travel. She has all kinds of stories. She's clairvoyant. She lives essentially in two realms, and she adored one husband who died. That was the worst part of her life. I asked actually a mutual friend of ours for more detail because I wasn't able to get a full timeline. She used to have foster kids, and she could really relate to their dark space. There on the right, what do we say? Slow onset paralysis, dizzy spells that cause falls and further injury. She's taking lots of allopathy. She had jabs. But we didn't say anything, but she understood when we came to see her. She said, "Don't tell them if you haven't gotten vaccinated because they won't let you in here." The nurse, she has a full-time somebody at home. Anyway, the thing I'm concerned about is she has a prescription to end her life if she chooses at any moment. She doesn't want to take up her kids' inheritance by paying for a hospice nurse to be there full-time. It's something like $50,000 a month to pay for this. Anyway, we can go on.
Okay, what I did, because we got a lot of timeline from you, so I kind of slimmed it down to the key points in the case here.
Sure.
Makes sense. Okay.
Great. Yes. So she was married young. She was married many times. She had the one husband of the many she was married to that she really adored. He died of cancer, and this was the worst part of her life.
Lisa, how many were there exactly?
I don't know. I'm guessing, I don't know, 5 or 7 or something.
Why didn't you ask her?
Oh, because I actually got this information. She tells stories. She goes on and on. We ran out of time, and I asked another friend when she stopped getting back in touch with me, and she started saying she wasn't well enough to see anyone when we would show up at her house.
Right.
So I wasn't able to complete the timeline, which is concerning because she might be starting to check out again. She'd sort of revived and decided to live after we went to see her and just kind of spent some time with her. But yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't able to complete the timeline.
Let's just pause there for a second. And there's
Sure.
something very important there. When we have someone who's married many times, more than 2 or 3 even, right?
Mhm.
And she says there's somewhere in between there was a husband she really adored and died of cancer.
Uh-huh.
Because we don't know if it's husband number 1 or husband number 10. Because therefore we're losing a bit of context in the case. Not a problem. She might be, like you said, she's in between 2 worlds. She might be getting ready to die. She might be schizo. She might be floating. She might be clairvoyant. Doesn't matter. So we can't make much sense of it. So we have to use the things that we can make sense of.
I think I strongly suspect it was an early on husband. So second is my best guess. There, nobody said that, but there was an implication.
Okay. Okay, fine. So she loved the attention, very beautiful, very sought after by men, and very successful in real estate.
She did well financially. Now I mean, she's been in a walker for many years, but she's happy. She putters around in her yard with her pets. She has 2 dogs that love her. She has friends. She's very popular. She has lots of friends that come and see her. But now she's sort of bedbound, and she wants to not be bedbound or check out.
So when you say check out, do you mean she's getting ready for death?
Yes, she has a prescription. You have to be what do you call it? In California, you can choose an end of life prescription, which she has done. And she very clearly told us she's not afraid of death, and she might check out if she can't get out of if she's not well enough to end the relationship with the 24/7 hospice nurse by June, she plans to take the prescription.
So we've got a lady here, in essence. This changes everything then. If she wants to die, there's no point in analyzing the case, is there?
Well, she also, when I was there last, which was some weeks ago, she wanted to get better. She'd changed her tune. She wanted to get better, and she said, I told her I'd become a homeopath, and she wanted to, she
Okay.
said, you can experiment on me. I'll take, whatever you give me. I wasn't able to, we were leaving town, and I sent the prescription over with my son and said, take it into her and go give her a hug and tell her we sent love. She wasn't well enough, quote unquote, not well enough to see him then. So I was concerned she's starting to check out again since a few weeks ago when we last saw her. So I don't know. I mean, yes, she might, but I mean, on the off chance that she might want to live, do you think it's worth analyzing, or should we stop here and move on to the next one?
Okay, well, no, we're not going to stop and go to the next one. We're just not. I don't say this to say stop your case. I say that as homeopaths, sometimes we have to make that decision. Say, well, where is this patient at in their journey, right?
Right.
There's remedies to help with every stage of the journey, even to help people DIP, die in peace. We often say to people, rest in peace, but if they want to transition, there are remedies to help that process. That doesn't make them die. Don't get me wrong, they're going to shoot me down on social media. It doesn't make them die. It makes their transition painless and pain-free and easier for them, should they so desire. Remedies are not magic pills. They don't do anything the body won't want to do in the first place. They help the body. Why? Because the body has a vital force. You expire the vital force, all we have is flesh and bone left.
Right.
Just the vital force, that's our sustaining life, spirit, soul, call it what you want. That's inside us. When that's wanting to depart the body, it will. The remedies will help it. If it wants to stay, it will. So she's in this, can't decide. That's fine. We don't analyze that too much. Just, she's saying that she's clairvoyant. That's her description. But we'll go through it. She traveled, married many times. She raised foster kids. She's been through hell. I wonder what her hell was that she's been through.
I think it was losing the husband, according to the mutual friend.
And that's the pain in the body, right?
Yeah, I mean, pain in the mind, emotions, and body, wherever it is, yes.
Okay. So now we're starting to analyze the case. And then she decided to get a hip replacement 15 years ago. Hip replacement is the ability to move forward in life, isn't it, right?
I guess so.
So that's indicative. That's her body telling her. It carries the hips, align our body. They carry us in a balance, right? They connect the lower body to the upper body. It's thrusts us going forward. So when I have a fear of going forward in life, it's going to manifest in my hips. If you look in Louise Hay's book, you might find, I don't have it to hand, but something like either fear of moving forward or I've got nothing to move forward in life anymore. And that's exactly where her illness manifested after all this wonderful life and this love of her life dying. And we can look at it and say, well, this is gradually developing ailments. Yes, it happened over time. Slowly, they've given her a new hip, but she's still got nothing to go forward to. So we could, if we remedy change, we can say, right, it's costicum, gradually developing ailments. We could look at that and think, well, okay, but that's happening. What's caused it? What's actually caused this in her? If we look at it another way, there's all this changeability. Give her a hug. You might think phosphorus. You might think pulsatilla. You might think tuberculomyces. All these thoughts come to our minds, don't they? Because all of these are in this case right now.
Mhm.
Husbands, it could be broken relationships, just wanted change, got bored. It could be changeable. And if you're up mind changeable symptoms, things like pulsatilla come up, the windflower changes with the wind. She's adventurous, she gets bored easily, all these things. In our questioning here at CPH, we asked someone, if you had a couple of weeks off and money was no object, what would you do? Their answer. Ask your patients that one day, people. Their answer can be very revealing into their true nature and their desires, and it helps you identify who they are. But okay,
Can you say that again? Sorry.
if you want to ask your patients, ask them, say, if you had a few weeks off and money was no object, what would you do? And for those listening, reflect on yourself. Ask your loved ones later on today or tomorrow. The answers are very insightful. If you ask somebody, they might say, right, I'll travel the world, won't sit still, tubercular. Someone might say, right, I'll get my house in order, build a garage, do an extension, change the furniture. Soric, creature comforts like it. Someone else might say, you know what, I will visit all my friends and family, loved ones. Pulsatilla needs or arsenicum, mind, company, desires. So their answers are very revealing to who they are. As we say, hear their words, feel their soul. So these are the kind of, so when we're brilliant homeopaths, or when we aspire to be even better homeopaths, we focus on our question techniques, on our case-taking techniques, not on learning remedy techniques. So these things help us along the way. She's done very well to find a lady. You might even have here mind indecisive. She can't decide what she wants to do. So these are all rubrics that could guide us in this case. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we think, well, which ones do I use? Well, start putting them down first, right? But then we sift and say, which ones are the effects? Which ones are the cause? But because we don't know where she's at with her head, because she's off her head at the moment, between two realms, we don't know what is truth and what is fiction. Did the death of love really impact that bad? She had nothing to move forward to? If so, we've got simple. We have ailments from death of loved ones, ailments from grief, etc. They're different remedies, aren't they? Different rubrics. So there's a lot to go there, even with sporadic information, which isn't at best. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now let's look at the right-hand side of you here. Tell us about this and the jab she's had here.
Sorry.
She's had some jabs in the last few years.
COVID jabs. She's had 4. They've told her to, and she did it.
So she's got ailments from vaccination. We talked about some Grace's case earlier. You see how the cases get easier to go through now. Because we have an obstacle to cure because her body is now full of drugs. For those who are not familiar, there's a method called the tautopathic method, which is also in Ellen's book. That tells us that there's an obstacle to cure because she's got drugs in her body. The drugs change the body physiologically, biochemically, possibly even mentally, emotionally. So we're not dealing with the patient now. We're dealing with the patient who is changed by virtue of the drugs she has been given. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That is the obstacle to cure. So we must remove that first before we look at anything else. And we don't know that that might be turning her brain funny.
It could
It might
be.
contain neurotoxins in there or things, you see. So it could be doing all sorts of things to this poor old lady's head. That's making her think life isn't worth living anymore. If life isn't worth living, why are you taking the jabs? You take the jab to prolong your life and stop dying. Can you see the paradox here?
Yes.
The irony. I'm ready for death, but I don't want to die, so I had the COVID jabs. Well, listen, madam, make your mind up. Do you want to die? Do you want to live? That comes under mind indecisive. We could turn around and say she clinically.
I actually think she took the COVID jabs just to be a sort of compliant patient, because she doesn't want to argue with the people that she's depending on to take care of her. I don't think she really believed in it.
Right, that's okay. But then we know she's done it, but then they're still going to impact her body, okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. She's got a drug that will help her die, and yet her goal is to be able to get around in a walker. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's a paradox. Mind contradictory. See, these kind of rubrics come to mind. So you might want to go back and re-rep and share it on the groups that you're in, so we can all learn, because we don't always get cases like this. And this is what we said earlier in Grace's case. The patients are our teachers. They teach us homeopathy in a way we can't even learn in textbooks or courses.
Right.
Right. Shall we go to the next slide?
Yes.
So what are we doing here? Talk us through this.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm still on module 2, and I haven't quite gotten myself to separate out the rubrics and do only mental versus physical versus different things. But I sort of wanted to do sing and organ support with a little bit of miasms and detox.
I think you want to do a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it kind of made sense. I had just finished Ellen's book, and Sing method looks good for heavy cases when you're not sure of the cause, which is definitely true in this case, since I wasn't able to finish her timeline completely. And she has even some unknown issues, some infection. She doesn't even know what part of the body it's in or what
Right,
kind
so-
of infection it
okay.
is. And
Let's just stop there, Lisa, because you could be going down a rabbit hole and a crazy maze.
okay,
This method is a very powerful method for deep
Okay.
toxicity, right? Let's not get any mistake there. And yeah, Ellen's one of the few people that teach that method, okay? Or shall we say, we teach it here. It's in Ellen's book. However, there's toxicity here. So if she's got deep toxicity, that's your obstacle to cure. But
Mhm.
what the book also teaches, Ellen's book, it gives us 15 methods. You know why? Because sometimes when we don't have all the information, we go back to this right here. Let's go back to one of the very first slides we had. What is the cause? You see it here?
Mhm.
If you don't know, there's a method for that called the totality in reverse order using the timeline. So
Okay.
even in the muddy waters, Ellen has given us clarity.
Okay.
Let me say that to everybody else listening. So even when things are unclear in a case, Ellen's given a method that gives clarity. We have another method called the miasmatic method. Miasmatic method teaches you to use a miasmatic remedy when indicated remedies fail to act, right? We have another method, another way of treating called the bowel nosodes. Bowel nosodes are often used when no clear remedy picture is apparent and use a bowel nosode. That comes towards the end of the case, the end of the course for our students, okay? So there's many ways that we can help this patient. And this is what we say, always feel supported and empowered. You have us on hand, you have the groups on hand, you have your course materials, and you have the book. So even with amongst that, you think, right, I don't know what the cause is. Well, I think we kind of do, but even if we didn't, we could use that method. And if we used it in reverse order, the recent trauma to her body is, what's the most recent trauma to her body?
The jabs.
Correct. So then we got to treat ailments from vaccination, and then we go backwards from there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There you go. You got your clarity. So you sit back and give yourself a chuckle, thinking, "Oh yeah, let's start with that first. Reverse order. Why? Because the method teaches me that." But what about her this, and what about her desire to death? Don't mind that. She's got vaccines that are damaging her body. She's not herself because she might be clairvoyant. But right now we have a toxicity ailment from vaccination. The way we treat it here, we just said it earlier, NUX, CARC, Thuya, silica. NUX and CARC, NUX detoxes the liver, so does carcinosin. It's got ailments from vaccination. Why do we give silica and Thuya? When we take a vaccine is designed to overstimulate our body to produce more antibodies, right? So an overstimulating triggers the psychotic miasm. And what is the psychotic miasmatic, sorry, I'm tired. What is the psychotic miasmatic remedy? Thuya, the tree of life. So we can understand why Thuya would be needed, because I've triggered an overproduction of antibodies. Then we might think, well, why is silica needed? Silica is the homeopathic scalpel. It removes foreign objects. What is a vaccine? It's a foreign object. So I'll use Nux, CARC, Thuya, silica, bingo, boom, done. When you do that, and what does Hahnemann tell us? When a patient has a medicine, a drug, first they have to recover from the drug, then the disease. Because the drug changes us pathologically, physiologically, biochemically. So first thing we do is remove the obstacle before we can worry about cause and effects. So the totality method guides us quite nicely in that respect. But now we've gone from totality method, the minute we saw the obstacle, we are now in the tautopathic method, because we're removing obstacles from tautopathic allopathic drugs, right? So this is where the methods guide us. Remedies are remedies, but the way to use a remedy in the order in which you use it, the methods give us that framework to do it. It clears up confusion. You might do it for a few months and say, I'll see her again. She might kill herself by next month in June. She has a drug for it. That's her choice. You don't beat yourself up that you couldn't save her. You do what you can with the information you have at the time. And that's the best any of us can do.
Right.
So that's a really good way of looking at it. And hopefully that gives you a bit of confidence in your approach here, Lisa. Yeah?
Okay.
You happy
Yes.
with that?
Thank you. Yes, I am.
Let's go to the next slide. So we had all this. You said there's a tubercular tendency. Yes, there is.
For sure.
And if we look at the tongue tubercular tendency, but she was never well since her husband died. So we've got ailments from grief. Good.
Right.
So you can treat and you can rep for ailments from grief, ailments from disappointed love, ailments from death of loved ones. You've got these rubrics coming up. So once you remove the toxicity layer, you might give that at night time. We just discussed that in Grace's case, the time of the liver. You might give her only the daytime to help with the ailments from all of this, right? There's nothing wrong with giving you multiple prescriptions, one in the morning, one in the evening, etc. If she can take them, if she's of sound mind to be able to take them. Does that make
She
sense?
is. In her case, I decided to keep things simple and give her one bottle of everything for now.
Okay. So you said she also seems a bit of a phosphorus type. Okay, that's where we're trying to match a person to a remedy.
Yeah, that was chasing, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, that's okay. But you know what? We do what we know, and when we know better, we do better. Nothing wrong with that. Many people around the world remedy chase every day, right? It's a start.
Well,
It's
I
a start.
didn't-
It's better than
It
doing
was
nothing.
just like, yeah, look, I was looking at it from the beginning. I didn't actually include phosphorus in her prescriptions because it didn't. come
Well,
up
hold
enough
that
to
thought
remember.
because you might be surprised with that. Phosphorus is the miasmatic remedy for the tubercular miasm.
Oh,
The miasmatic nosert for the tubercular is tuberculinum, as we all know.
right.
So you're not far off.
Okay.
And the tubercular miasm in the 5 elements, look where it sits. Watch this. You're going to love this. You think, plans coming together. It sits right on the bottom right with the lungs, which are attached to the emotion of grief.
Interesting.
So she's full of sadness. And when we're sad, we might stay and wallow and do nothing, or we might want to change the world and have variety. Why? Anything is better than sitting at home wallowing in my misery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting? In fact, I'm so miserable, I'll foster kids to take my attention elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a whole lot of love to give. I want to give it to many men or to many children, and phosphorus are very sensitive, loving people. Very, very closely related to pulsatilla, which is another tubercular remedy. Windflower, affectionate, sensitive, caring. Both are very, very strong liver remedies. Why would we need a liver remedy? Because she's full of toxicity, right? So you start to make sense with your remedy picture. Does that make sense now?
Yes.
So
So I suspected I pulled both pulsatilla and phosphorus.
almost by fluke, you kind of got there, but don't feel too bad about it.
Say that again?
To make sense out of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So, do you want to go to, yeah, obstacles would be continued jabs if she continues. I think she might be willing to stop now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said you're considering through, yeah? We just talked about her.
Oh, I did add it. I added, if you look on the lower left, you can see what I
your
actually gave
prescription,
her.
that's right.
But I
So
don't
this-
actually know if
go
she's
on.
taking it.
That's fine, but that's her choice, not yours.
Yeah.
We
That is
can't
what-
make anybody do anything. We can only help them. The patient is the healer. They got themselves unwell. They will get themselves well should they so desire. We are only the facilitator. That's very important for us all because it keeps our ego in check. Doesn't matter if we're the best homeopaths on the planet or if I've just read page 1 of book 1. We are
Right.
only the facilitators. We listen to their symptoms, we do our rep work, and we give them some things. It's like having a personal trainer. If I don't do my diet and exercise, I'm not getting in shape no matter how good my trainer is.
Mm-hmm.
The patient is the healer.
Yes.
Leave it at that. So it's up to them. How badly do they want to heal? If she doesn't want to, that's her choice, and we have to respect that. It's her life, not ours.
Right.
So you've done what you can, and you've done well here. Okay. For yourself, you want to go and see it because you know it. That's fine. But then if you do, give yourself carcinosin. Why? Carcinosin is carer syndrome. When we do for others above us, right? So if we're all in the place of carers, maybe we all need carcinosin.
I'm starting to
Very-
see that.
Okay. Because when we get too close, we'll break down when they die. Then we have to give ourselves all the grief remedies. We become emotionally attached, especially when we know them. That's normal. We're human. We're not robots. That's okay. That's what the remedy is for. It says we're human. We have these emotions. How can we best deal with them? If it gets a bit much and we get overwhelmed, that's when carb comes in. Mind full of cares, full of worries, responsible over responsible. 4 rubrics right there. Then we say to our colleagues, can you take the case and I'm getting too close and it's affecting my judgment? It's having that self-awareness. Okay, I love it. Just enjoy life as much as possible. Good. This is all part. And you said later for dizziness with falling, if the dizziness was the effects of the vaccines, you don't need to give her that. Get rid of the vaccine detox, the dizziness will disappear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You see?
I didn't give her tellurium, but okay, sure.
Okay, so then we've got a cause effect. So when we do this and talk about it often like this today, we learn it again and again, it sticks in our brain. We learn to identify and separate the cause from the effects. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go to the next slide. You did some rep work here. Now, this is interesting. When you do rep work like this, ladies and gentlemen, nothing wrong with it. Not a lot particularly right with it either. That's not a criticism, it's an observation. Why? When your rep work is showing more gaps than it's showing more scores, something's not right, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
That's the early observation I want to say. I'm not going to criticize any of the rubrics. I'm going to say when there are more gaps than scores, we've got a whole lot of nothing going on. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Likewise here, you could almost narrow it down to the paralysis, general weakness, vertigo, general, but these are effects of something else. So we've got a whole lot of gaps with lots of 2s and 1s. That doesn't give us robust, and we've got 13 rubrics in total. Narrow it down to 4 or 5, and boom, you get something
Many.
powerful. So this
Which
is
I have a question for you, Sam.
go on.
Based on what you know of this case, which rubrics do you think are, this is what's been challenging so far for these
That's
first
all
two
right.
cases
That's okay.
presented?
That's well,
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what?
How-
There's no, well, okay, I'll just answer it like this then. There you go. Have a little sticker to yourself. This is what I did earlier. When I was putting the slides together, I thought, you know what, I can't resist having a go.
Right.
Why? Because if those of you who know me, I'll say do the rep work and the rep will do the work. Yeah, that's my little mantra. And now you can laugh your head off. You're thinking, hang on a minute. Mind clairvoyant, general grief ailment from she does have. She's full of toxicity and poisons. Oh, look, there's our famous tubercular remedy, which is great for sensitive people, great for them. But now I've got really robust rationale of why I'm using phosphorus. True? Good.
Mhm.
And look what's behind it. Nux vomica for my liver,
Mhm.
arsinosin to unsuppress me. So I got my patient's story right here. We talked about Nux and Carc and Thulium silica for the vaccines anyway. So I'm already giving them. The only difference that makes the difference is the phosphorus. Not because she's a phosphorus type, tick. Not because she's tubercular, tick. Not because she's sensitive, tick. Or clairvoyant, tick. It ticks all your boxes, literally. Now, when you look at that top rep and you compare it to the ones here with lots of gaps, and we've only got 4 rubrics, you think, okay, this is how we do it. It's not the right way. It's not the best way. It's a way. It's what I saw in the case, and I could be wrong.
Okay, this
That's
one I
what I'm
need to
saying.
figure out and strengthen how to choose rubrics very carefully.
Yes. And
There's so many ways to word them, and they all produce different remedies. It's that part
this
is
is,
a bit confusing.
Lisa, for the rest of our lives, we'll all struggle with getting right rubrics. We do it every day. I do it on a daily basis. You know how many mistakes I make? One day I'll be a genius. I made that many mistakes. So that's the point. Have no fear. And look at the beautiful digital rep, delete, rep, delete. You're not counting scores on a spreadsheet. It takes 5 minutes to do rep.
Right.
So, and the more rep you do, like we said, if we read down the left-hand side here, it should describe my patient, which it does. If we read along, we learn our materia medica. We think, okay, phosphorus, I know is great for clairvoyance. Bang. You've just learned your remedies. You've learned your materia medica by doing your rep work. Nobody else teaches it this way. And as we go through case after case, we will note these down and jot these down, and we will never, ever forget them. And ladies and gentlemen, our students here at CPH, to graduate, they have to create their own materia medica, and they have to create their own therapeutics book. We just did therapeutics for porn addiction earlier. We've got therapeutics here for clairvoyance now. So you can see by doing your cases how you write your own book. And that's why we don't do guru worship here. Not us, not Robin Murphy, God rest his soul, or Berwick, or Kent, or Clark. We say, you did this, let me take it and now expand on it my way. So that way your journey through homeopathy is very personal to you. Lisa's homeopathy is different to Grace's, different to Psalm's, different to Sarah's. Because by virtue of the cases you do. But when we do it this way, we all grow and share. That's why we encourage you. Please do case after case, share them, discuss them, and you'll be surprised what we learn every day. Then underneath, look, we've got the drug detox method here. So we've got Nux and arsenicum down the bottom here. We've got Nux and Carc and Phos up there. We're giving Nux and Carc through your silica already. Check, check. And we've got phosphorus for her. Boom. And guess what phosphorus is? Phosphorus causes destructive metabolism of the mucous and serous membranes. It's also a major, major nerve remedy. She's got paralysis, which is destruction of the body. Phosphorus is a destructive remedy. If you read in MatMed, you're reading about the destruction to the phossy jaw. but it's a component of bones along with calcium. It makes calc phos. It's a component of nerve nutrients along with potassium called caliphos. So that's how phosphorus is a major polycrest remedy. So it will heal on multiple levels that you don't have to worry about things like costicomegaly, like, oh my gosh. So when we say, do your rep work first, then you open up your materia medica and you read all about phosphorus, think, oh my goodness, it's an amazing remedy. Not because she's tubercular, sounds phosphorus, because I've done my rep work and I've got a bloody good rationale for giving this remedy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, gives you really powerful reasons. We say here, you can give any remedy you want as long as you can justify it within the context of the case and within the framework of the method. And once you do, it will always steer you right, no matter how the case looks or how complicated, or in this case, how vague.
Right.
I'm going to share with you a few remedies. Not everyone's familiar with things like the meditative provings. There's a remedy they're called amethyst and ayahuasca. They're great for helping people from one realm to the other. There are also remedies in there for clairvoyance. And forgive me, I'm tired. Somebody will pick it up and share it on the groups later. There's a couple of remedies that are meditative provings for clairvoyance. I'm sure somebody with a greater brain than mine will share it later. But this will enhance this. And when we give meditative proving remedies, we give them at the esoteric auric field, which are 10M, CM, MM, and things like 50Ms. M for mental, high mental emotional potencies. They work very deep on an auric level, on a soul level. We don't mess around with 30Cs. Because they're not designed to work on a 30C level. They were designed to work on a spiritual level.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Good. Happy with that?
Brilliant. Can I tell you a funny story about phosphorus?
Go on.
I took it once. I had some weird knocking in my ear and I repped it and took phosphorus. And I had Invisalign recently and I noticed that my teeth aligned better after I took it.
Sorted your jaw out, well done.
Sorry?
Yeah, sorted your jaw out, your teeth alignment.
It did. Interesting.
Calc phos, calc fluor, fluoric acid, they're great for strengthening tooth enamel. There's another bit of therapeutics, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Calc fluor is calcium fluoride. We don't need fluoride in toothpaste. We take fluor, take it as a tissue salt, 6X, job done. Same with calc phos. And if you really want to get technical with it, go into your Silas machine, get a rate for enamel and put that in as well, and dentine.
Oh.
Exactly. That's the way we do it the CPH way. So you get really inventive with your homeopathy. We don't teach that in books. You don't learn it anywhere else. You don't learn it on YouTube. And as we say with people, only a course will get you qualified this way. Reading books does not give us a certificate or the ability to practice this way. Because when we read books, all we do is do what the author does. Here we teach you to think for yourself and get creative. We have one of our students with Renata. She's a fantastic investigative homeopath. Her sharings and learnings over the last few years have enlightened so many people. And that's the person who's going to take her homeopathy to a different level. But she's got an inquisitive mindset. That's what we want to foster and encourage here. Okay. Any questions from the floor? If Francesca or Sarah's around? Anything or feedback, or shall we carry on?
I'm here, Son. Yeah, we're just having lovely discussions about sac-lac and sac-albium and Murphy 4 and 3. But otherwise, there's not a huge amount coming up other than what potency to use for addictions when using sac officinus, which comes up as
addiction. If it's, like we said, if it's chronic and you're going low, slow, you give 30C, 200C. 200C I would start off because it's not just physical. An addiction starts in the mind. And in my simple Som mind, I say M for the mind. So I'd probably go 10M. The addiction starts in the brain, manifests through the body, comes through the saliva into cravings, whether it's cocaine, heroin, sugar, porn, Netflix addiction that people want to binge watch all the time. These are all addictions. Alcohol, cigarettes, whatever it is. It's the reward center in the brain, the dopamine receptor. Actually, remind me somebody, we'll do a webinar on addiction one day. Today's not the time for it.
no further questions at this time, Son. Thank you.
Okay. Lisa, you happy with that?
Very happy. Thank you so much.
Well done. Very, very well done.
Thank you.
Next victim for us. Erica. Erica, are you with us?
Yes, the next victim is here.
Erica, right. You're not one member of CPH yet, are you, right?
No,
So I've got you here as an APH graduate with us, and your patient is AG. fire away. So how are you finding it so far? It's the first time we've had a chance to speak and listen. And how are you finding this experience as a non-teacher?
It's so interesting to me. And what I put in, the person I put in, I do know her. Because you said you wanted to know that, and I
Fine,
put,
so not many people other than us 50 odd people here will share this, but we'll find a way to make it work somehow, somewhere.
okay, and then also I did not do any rubrics or anything because like we'd started basically with conium, calc floor, and arnica, and it held the fibroids, like they only got a little teeny bit bigger in a year, but I know her, and after talking to her and going through all this, it's so heavy on the emotional side, and I have no experience with that yet, but I know that that's where it has to go.
Okay. So what you can do, what we encourage here with our CPH graduate students as well, it doesn't matter if you do the rubrics, it doesn't matter if you know nothing. And this is my appeal to even our students now. Some of you might think, well, I can't present the case, I don't have the information. Doesn't matter, start. We will build it up together. That's what we do these things for. If you're brilliant at cases, you don't need this, go and help and teach other people, right? So it's okay to not know, and we will find out what we don't know, what we yet need to learn. We'll fill in the gaps, which will help your case taking skills, development skills, etc. So do not worry, do not be apologetic. Let's go with what we've got, and let's put something together. Okay.
Well, that was why I took a shot at when Sarah said, did anybody have a case?
Good.
Because I figured it was a good starting one.
Good. So now we're here. Over to you. Fire away. Just start sharing. And
Okay, so
let's make something out of this.
okay, so female, 40 years old, African American, 5'9". She has fibroids currently dilated to 20 centimeters from I think 16 or 18, and she's gained 30 pounds. She wants to have a child. But she's 40, and they told her that they want her to have a hysterectomy. She's stressed from working as a teacher, and that was going on through COVID. There was also stress from a close friend of hers dying, and then her sister's husband died in his 30s suddenly. She also has factor V, which I guess is like a white blood cell clotting issue, and her mother has that as well. Her father is or was schizophrenic, and then her sister is schizophrenic, and a brother is bipolar. The mother also has the factor V, and I think she said that she has fibroids.
Okay.
Do you want me to read the timeline?
Okay, let's just read the timeline. I mean, most people can read it, but tell us now. You've just added some information to us. You know, you've kept it brief, which is what a presentation should be. Because if everything you want to say is on a slide, you do not need to speak. We can read, right?
All
So
right. The only thing
it's good. It
is,
gives context. So carry on. You're doing well.
okay. The only thing that I left out after hearing Lisa do hers is that I'm sure that she was vaccinated because she's a teacher. And I don't know, I'm guessing 4, but I don't know which one, but this issue was going on before the vaccine. So it's just another layer, basically.
Okay. So let me just pause for a second here. Ladies and gentlemen, when we take a case and someone comes to us with their ailments or their conditions or their disease, they will tell us what they've got. Fine. What our job should be then is, how long have you had it? When did it begin? And what was happening in your life around that time? So I'll say that again. What have you got? How long have you had it? And what was happening in your life around that time? They are the 3 key questions about any ailment that the patient comes with. We're not, and this not just to you here, Erica, it's to everybody.
Right.
I said
I
every
get it.
time we do a clinic, we're not symptom taking secretaries. The symptoms are only signs of the body. So they're pointing somewhere. Okay, and we're going to analyze that in a minute, and I'll share my thoughts on it, and we can build up something. So they come to us, they're concerned, good. They're not good that they're concerned, but it's good that we know what they're concerned with, because it helps us ask the questions after that first initial statement. Good. So we've got that here. You said there was a lot of stress in her life. So we're already seeing your picture. Cause is stress and grief and this that you just talked about. The effects are fibroids. So you've seen that already. Are we treating the fibroids, which are the effect, or treating the cause? We don't know yet, because it also depends what else is happening in her life. So share with us the timeline, a few points there.
Okay, so the mother was is a hoarder, so the house was filled with a ton of stuff. So that makes her stressed out, because there was basically nowhere to come in for a landing except for maybe her room. The father was not in the house because he was schizophrenic, so the mother had him leave. In her senior year of high school, she got pregnant, but did not want to have a child then. The boyfriend was in the military. He was going to take her, but she was not able to contact him because of the base was on lockdown. So she went herself. They told her when she had the abortion that they saw something abnormal at the time that she should come back to get checked out, and she never went back. Then within a year, she went on the pill for 2 years, stopped because of recurring yeast infections. And then there were multiple courses of antibiotics to deal with that. And then also had urinary tract infections on that. 2013, a really close friend of hers died of cancer in his 30s. 2015 was when she noticed the fibroids, but something's already was going on in 2001. That's kind of what I've got with that.
Okay. So now let's talk a bit about this. We've got a lady, fibroids dilated, 20 centimeters. That's quite large. She's going to breathing cramps, and she's had some weight gain. Okay. We don't yet know the cause. She got pregnant, but she had an abortion. How did she feel about that abortion?
I'm sure she was, did not want to have a child then because she wanted to go to college and do her career, but I'm sure she was conflicted because now she really wants to be a mother. So I think that there was conflict on that. And I think that the boyfriend wanted her to have it. So there was definitely stuff going on with that.
Okay. Now, so therefore we have a rubric there. It might be elements from guilt, elements from regret, elements from remorse. We don't know, because so when we do a case like this, ladies and gentlemen, it makes us ask questions. We look back and we think, okay, I should have asked a few more questions. That's nothing wrong with that. That's how we learn to improve our questioning and case taking. So oftentimes when something happens, a life event in someone's life, we ask them either how did it make you feel? If they don't want to talk about their feels, we say, how did it impact you? Their answer can be very revealing. Nothing, I got on with it. Stiff upper lip, carry on, just get on with it. Suppressed emotions. I was torn to pieces. I was helpless. I was in despair. Words for rubrics. We've got to ask the question. The patient does not know what to tell us, or in what order to tell us, or how to tell us. They're reliant on our question skills and our case-taking skills to ask them this. So that's okay. So we're learning that we could have asked a bit more. Maybe on the follow-up we can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said she was on birth control pill for 2 years. Now,
Yes.
birth control pills, Provera, Depo-Provera, whatever they might be called, sometimes the side effect of them is continuous bleeding and fibroids. So when someone has fibroids, we ask them, what kind of fibroids? Just painful, bearing down pains, clotting, bleeding, continuous bleeding, spotting. So there's a lot we can ask on female health just with the word fibroids. Does that make sense?
Well, I know it's clotting and cramps during her period, and then where normally her cycle would be 5 days, it went to 7.
Okay, that's okay.
Some was heavy bleeding.
Good. Okay, good. As the more information we have, we understand it. So we said, when did we have the first sign of fibroids? Was 8 years ago. So she was 32.
Well, but they said they saw something abnormal when she had the abortion. That's a question mark for me.
Right. Okay. So now we're learning something else. Now, what do we know about fibroids? They are, if we look back at here, I'm just gonna come here, like, just trying to escape out of this. Just bear with me 1 second. What do we know about fibroids? Let's go back to our famous chart here. Okay. Fibroids are here, the genitourinary organs. As I call it, the cradle of life for a woman. Okay. The emotion is fear. Louise Hay will tell us that fibroids are a bruise to the feminine ego, an insult to the woman. I wonder what's happened in her life that's made her angry.
Well, I know she was in a 16-year on and off relationship that he had already had a child and did not want to have another one because he was like, the child was already in his teens and he didn't want to start again. But
Okay.
they still stayed with him. So I think there was anger from being with a guy that she likes, but him not giving her what she wants and her staying with it.
Right. So Louise Hay, quote me if I'm wrong, somebody, if someone's got a book to hand, it's something like he was being hurt by a partner, a blow to the feminine ego, things like this come together with fibroids. So what you've just described, it's affecting her femininity. She wanted a kid and a family with him. He wasn't interested. So what does the body do? It hardens. A fibroid is a hardening. We could ask if they're hard or soft fibroids, but she's becoming hard on the inside. That's a tuberculomism in many respects as well, when the body hardens to insults or things that happen in life. Okay. So her body's telling us how she feels about that. But this also happened after the first abortion from years ago. And was
Well,
this
it also, honestly, I think hardening is part of her personality for protection.
well, there you go. Now we're starting to understand the patient. Now we're getting down to real homeopathy. So she's hardened to life.
Right. She's protective, defensive.
What is she protective of? What is she defensive of?
I think of being hurt.
So she's got mind suppressed emotions. We've got a close friend died of cancer. Mind, death, ailments from. Mind, grief, ailments from. It might be a bit of regret around the abortion because now she regrets it 10, 20 years later, right?
Right.
And so has she ever had children?
No.
Right. She wants to have a child. She's not in a relationship currently. So she's full of bitterness and regret. And that's making her really angry because of wasted life. She's thinking, hang on a minute, I had perfect opportunities. So this is why she will open up. Right now, she's closed on and hardened. So she's suppressed. And as we just discussed throughout the evening today, carcinosis is a great unsuppressor. And we're starting to understand cause rather than just treating fibroids. And as we said earlier, the patient's body tells us how they deal with their stress. Every patient deals with it differently. Can you remember this conversation, Erica?
Yes.
So this lady is showing us that she deals with hurt and regret and remorse and suppressed emotions. And her way of dealing with it, her body manifests fibroids and they're growing because she hasn't let that stuff go yet. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we know where she's at already. So you see what I mean? We don't have much, but we've got enough to make a case.
Right.
Why? It's not because someone's sitting here making things up. It's because the body never lies. And we've had the great homeopaths for 300 years telling us. We've had Louise Hay for the last 70, 80 years doing these studies and numerous other people and the Chinese people doing it for 5,000 years. Let's use their wisdom and not reinvent the wheel in this instance.
Right.
So people lie, but the body never lies. So that's what she's telling us here. She's had surgery to remove them, but they've grown back. Good. So now that also tells us if we treat the fibroids therapeutically, they're going to go back. You know why? Because they're an effect. We need to work on the cause. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Same conversation when we have with cancer patients. Oh, I'm going to get a tumor removed. Okay, well, it will come back. Sooner or later it will because the cause has not been dealt with, which is why we teach here. I think, CEO, when you join us, you'll think, okay, I get it now. And that's why we practice homeopathy slightly differently to other people. So do you have another slide behind here?
Maybe a little bit.
So sometimes now we would do the talk to path about it. If you went on the birth control pill for 2 years, but stopped, I cannot disclude that because the birth control pill is the devil in a pill. It messes up women for generations. So you could do a pill detox. She's got clotting. Does she have bearing down pain? So I would have been inclined to ask her what happens around her periods and her menses. And
She gets cramps, but I don't think it's bearing down pain.
That's okay. We'll share some we'll share a few remedies for therapeutics for fibroids anyway, because that will help us learn remedies. It will help us open up our materia medica books, and it helps us strengthen our therapeutics. Because there's sometimes if we can't take a case, we can give something until we're able to take a case. Okay, so we'll come to that in a minute. Next slide. Okay, that's the only slide we have, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we have here a lady who's had ailments from grief, disappointments, maybe some remorse and regret, maybe some guilt, ailments from disappointed love, maybe ailments from rejection.
All
these
of
things-
the above.
Right. So if somebody, you or somebody live from tonight, or maybe later on one of the groups on Signal or WhatsApp wants to rep for that, you'll probably find remedies like Natmure and carcinosin come up high. And you're like,
And-
well, that doesn't treat fibroids. No, it treats the cause of the fibroids, right? And as we said, once we treat the cause and reset the vital force, it will do the rest and remove. Does that make sense?
Yes, and then do you also do a like a detox from the pill
detox,
with the
yes. Yeah.
vaccine?
A pill detox, Nux, Carc, Pulsatilla, Sepia, Folliculinum. Very powerful pill detox of any kind of pill or any HRT.
Okay,
So, but rep for them, and you'll probably find something like Natmure, right? So rep for it, do the rep work, and the rep will do the work, as I say. So you've got some good guidance there, okay?
yes,
So that's good. So if everyone's ready, I'll just fire out things that I can remember. Fibroids. Fibroids, when they get bleeding and heavy bleeding, one of the biggest remedies in the materia medica, it's funny, there's always themes when we do cases. Phosphorus is a great remedy for fibroids with profuse bleeding, continuous bleeding between periods. As you said, they went from 5 to 7 days. So phosphorus could help in that case. So phosphorus tubercular remedy. The tubercular miasm is when we harden to things in life. Sabina is a great remedy for fibroids with clotting and bleeding. Okay. So there's one to add to the therapeutics book. There's another one that's used as a uterine tonic and also for bearing down pains. It may not be needed here, but as a uterine tonic, it would help. It's called Fraxinus americana. It's a great uterine tonic. You can take it in tincture, or why bother? You can give it in potency and use it there. Calcarb, great for fibroids with chilliness. We've talked about sepia. Now, there's something that comes to mind. When we have fibroids and we've got this weight gain, that affects the thyroid at the same time. And on the Indian Ayurvedic system, the base chakra and the throat chakra are linked. You know why? Because when I can't express my displeasure at life, my throat chakra gets blocked and my root chakra gets blocked. The genitourinary urinary organs are the base chakra, right? So the remedy that was great for that is thyroidinum. Thyroidinum will give her voice back so she can unsuppress along with the carcinosin you'll be giving her. And that's a great remedy, almost as specific for fibroids with weight gain. And 30 pounds of weight gain is quite significant.
right.
Okay. You have another one called Trillium for excessive bleeding and fainting. They lose so much blood, they pass out. That sometimes makes us think of things like China and Virat, right? China is great for debilitation after loss of bodily fluids. But Trillium is more for fibroids, for bleeding due to excessive bleeding, even during periods. Some ladies go down, can't get out of bed. Trillium is a good remedy for that one. Provera we talked about. There's a rare known remedy, not as rarely known, let me say that, a minor remedy, not as commonly known. It's in your materia medica called Ustilago myadis. And that reason it sticks out because it's great for fibroids. But I was talking to somebody the other day, we were talking about miscarriages as well. It's great for that as well. And that's a great one for uterine hemorrhages, which is excessive bleeding. That's Ustilago myadis. And finally, there's something called Aurum muriaticum natrum. That's a general overall uterine remedy as well. So you've got a load of therapeutic remedies as well. But the cause of it will be the grief. So rep for that. Does that help?
Right.
You feel a bit more confident in what you might want to do?
Yes, but I'm not confident in, like, because it's emotional, do you go to the 10M?
Well, okay. If it's emotional and she's had this for a long time, when it's chronic, we can go low and slow. So start with 30C. The
Okay.
next one, follow it up. Her fibroids will have some improvement. Please make sure that she's not taking any drugs, because then you have a drug layer and an obstacle to cure, okay?
Yes.
So we always ask our patients, are you taking any medication? It doesn't have to be prescription. Sometimes they go to the pharmacy and take Advil for 3-4 days. She might be taking Advil and Tylenol for period pains and cramps. We don't know yet. If she has, we've got to detox them as well.
Okay.
So, and if you cannot create a rate for that or a totopathic rate, you can always give Nux and arsenicum back, because that's great detox, Nux, Carc, and arsenicum, when you cannot use the totopathic method to do ailments from toxicity and allopathic drugs. Okay.
Right, but also because of the COVID vaccines as well, right? Don't you think take that layer off?
Right. So let's go again with this. So in the evening, we're going to give her all in one. If you can do a combo, we're going to do the detox and the COVID vaccine. So it's Nux, Carc, through your silica, Sepia pulsatilla folliculinum. Bang, done. 30C at night time. What an easy prescription. All she's got to do is pop a pill. All you've got to do is make 7 remedies in one. And then you treat with the mental emotional, and I'd say start at 200C in this instance, then give it in the morning. What remedy? We don't know. I can pretty much I can pretty much say it's going to be Natmure, but if you do the rep work, depending on your rubrics, you may find Natmure, you may find Ignatia, you may even find Staphylococcus aureus. Choose your rubrics, work with the friends and the group that you have, come together with that. People may even do it live now. But that will tell you the remedy for the cause. We're removing the obstacles, let the effects worry about themselves. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, we think, oh my God, but if I don't treat the fibroid, the patient will not come back. That's more your fear than theirs. She's been living with this for ages, right? They will have time. Please don't feel under pressure, ladies and gentlemen, to try and cure your patient in 1 month. There's a phrase that I like you to share. I learned it from Ellen when I was studying and learning from her. She said, if it takes 9 months to create a perfect human in a perfect environment in a woman, how long will it take to heal an imperfect human in an imperfect environment? So let's give time, which is why they're called patients, not clients. They need bloody patience. So we need patience in us. We need to remain steadfast in the course we're on. We need to tell them, take this now. I'm going to do a follow-up. Whether they take it, that's their decision, not ours. Then we can work deeper. And she will feel better within herself. She might say, my period was 6 days this month. You go 200 C, she might say, right, it's back down to normal again. I don't feel as painful. A year later, they might measure the fibroids and they've shrunk. No need for an operation anymore. You know why? Because you removed the cause, not the effect. Once you remove the cause, she lets go of all that resentment and grief. She doesn't have to be hardened to life. If she's not hardened to life, the lovely lining of the uterus will go back and be soft again.
Right.
Let the body amaze us every time. Okay?
Yes.
Happy with that?
Yes.
Well done, and thank you for. I know this was new to you. You know, you're new to the way we do things here. So really, really well done, Erica.
Thank you.
Okay, right. On the floor, any questions? Francesca, Sarah, is anybody still with us tonight?
Yeah, I'm still here, very much here. And yes, I do have some questions. One is, we have a lady here who's been treating a lot of women, coloured women, who are presenting with large fibroids.
Yes.
And multiple. Do you have any comment regarding this?
Exactly what we've just said. All the bruise for the feminine ego, what are they experiencing in their life? The fibroid is the effect. Please don't chase symptoms, ladies and gentlemen. They come with symptoms, good. That's our starting point to ask, well, what's going on? And if they're coloured women, they might be African American. Ask them, say, how's your married life? Is your husband married? Is he having affairs? How are you feeling? Have you had terminations? Have you had miscarriages that you haven't dealt with or grieved over? Some people do, some people don't. They're unaffected. They'll have another child. We have no context. So what we say is, please take things in the context of the case by taking the case. And if we don't know the case, we can't comment on it. And if you have the cases, please talk to Sarah or join CPH, and then let's discuss it at our regular Zoom clinics, and let's all learn from it. But it's the same questions. Where has that woman had hurt, abuse, bruise into the feminine ego, hurt by a former partner, or had things hardening in her life that she's just bitter and angry at the world? That the body never lies. Once you know that, you can treat it and rep for it. Any other questions, Francesca?
Still another one on fibroids. If fibroid has been removed, do we still treat as if it's there?
No, well, if it's been removed, you don't treat if the fibroid's there, you treat what caused the fibroid. These are good questions, because all it makes us listen to in a number of ways is, Treat the cause, not the effects. If you take nothing else away from this evening, ladies and gentlemen, CEO. Treat the cause, forget the effects, remove the obstacles. I couldn't say it any simpler. Next question.
Can you detox while someone is taking pharmaceutical medication?
Yes, that's called the tautopathic method. It's in Alan's book. Sorry to sound so blunt, but really it's that simple. And the way we do it here, we give Nuxcark and we call it T for tautopathic. You can call it D for drug, but the drug's given back in potency in the evening, which is the time of the liver.
Okay, one other question, and this one's about repertories. There are many repertory programs one can use.
Okay.
Does CPH like complete dynamics?
I don't know. I can't comment on that. What I will say is we're great fans of Robin Murphy, God rest his soul, and I'll tell you why. Not only did he do a fantastic job of amalgamating all the great homeopaths before us and putting their reps and rubrics and grading into one, he went one stage further and he gave us a scoring of 4. Every other rep that we use gives a scoring of 1, 2, and 3. That gives us an extra level of differentiation when we use Murphy's repertory. That's what I'm going to say. Whatever software you use that uses Murphy's repertory will still give you the 4 gradations. That's it. We're not particular to any favorite software system. We have one we use. It's called Vision by a company called Micant in the UK. They do a discounted offer for CPH students. Why? It's easy to use. They use Murphy's. And that's the reason we don't use things like combined reps and all the rest of it. Sometimes people say, well, I can't find the right rubric. Well, we say, learn harder, look differently. Because what Murphy's done, that was his gift to us in the homeopathic world. That 4th level of differentiation from 1, 2, and 3 scores. That enables you to be more precise in your prescribing, more individualized in your prescribing. Any other questions, Francesca?
Yes, I've just spotted a question that simply says, I forgot to ask about the factor 5 white blood cell issue.
Okay, what do we want to discuss about that?
No idea. I've just read out exactly what the question says.
So I'm not sure.
That's from Erica because it was on her case. So she's just asking for further guidance as to whether that's even something to look at, or is that something that would kind of you'd see maybe healed through using that other method. That's why she just wanted a little more guidance.
So
Yeah, she's just said remedy wise. Yes.
Okay. Well, if you've got factor 5 clotting, that is, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure someone will Google this in a bit. Factor 5 clotting is a factor that means that someone has an increased tendency to form clots, if I'm not mistaken. So that is, again, it's a hardening. So if you've got a factor 5 clotting issue, no wonder you're going to have fibroids. So what is it that's something that's causing the body to thicken and harden? It goes back to that hardening again, isn't it? Right? So that's the simple thing. So what is causing the body to harden? That's a tubercular miasm. If I use the miasmatic method, I say, well, if that's tubercular, can't I just give tuberculinum? Yes, you can intercurrently. But then we're into a method called the multi-method approach. We're using a tautopathic method for the vaccine and etc. in the pill. We're using the classical repertorizing for the mental emotional factors, which may come up with NATMUR. And then we're going to use a miasmatic intercurrently. That could be the layers method. But the layers method says use 1 layer at a time. When you use more than 1 layer concurrently, it's called the multiple method approach. So that's how I would deal with it there. Please, ladies and gentlemen, don't get tied up in allopathic names and no more than as they tell you what the body is doing. If I have a clotting issue, I have an increased tendency to clot, to harden. There's an excess production of a clotting factor. That then means there might be a psychotic miasm. Well, the psychotic miasm in the 5 element sits over genitourinary. Let's just go to this again, and you'll see what I mean. Right, so if we sit here again, so we think, okay, in that case, we've got our psychotic remedies through your Medaranda. Here's psychotic, overproduction of clotting factor, sits above the genitourinary organs. So that way I can make sense of it and say, well, actually, if I give Medaranda with Thuya, I can help. Yes, you can. Because what does Thuya deal with? Overproduction. Cysts are warts on the inside of the body, clotting factors. Homeopathy gives us a framework of thinking and applying our thoughts to whatever the allopathic people use to describe what happens to our body. So the simpler we make our language, the easier we can treat our patients. Oftentimes when patients come to me and describe their diseases, I say, tell me what you experience. Forget what the doctor tells you. I have asthma, I have this, I have that. I said, tell me what you experienced, and then tell me like I'm 5 years old, because it makes them use very simple English. They don't use fancy words. They don't use medical names, because the simpler their words are, the better I can rep. So let's not try and get bogged down in doctor speak, because doctors don't really cure people. They just give them drugs and suppress them. Let's do our language, unsuppress and heal people. Any other questions, Erica? Francesca, sorry.
That's okay. I still know my name, I think.
Late in the day.
Does CPH teach a hierarchy as far as which anatomical systems take more precedence than others, or are they taught as equal in weight?
There's no equal in weight. They're just tools. You use whatever tool you find helpful to help you determine the cause of your case. There is no hierarchy. A tool is only as good as a person using that tool. Hopefully I answer that question. Okay, very simply. Let's not look for saving graces, saving tools, go-to remedies, quick fixes, or protocols. We teach independent thinking here. We equip you with all the tools, 15 methods, herbs, nutrition, supplements. You come out pretty much, I won't say knowing it all, but knowing more than most other people. How you choose to use that is your own expertise, skills, and even preferences. We all have favorite methods. We all have favorite this. But then if you do that, be aware of your subconscious bias that makes you favor a method over the other. So always be willing to accept and reject anything, even a remedy, even a method. To question yourself. And to graduate from us, we ask for self-reflection, self-analysis, and self-critique. That if you looked at it in hindsight, what would you do differently? That enables our homeopaths to go out in the world and continuously improve even after they've graduated, which is where the real learning comes. So no, there's no hierarchy, but there's methodology and frameworks. Use the one that is most appropriate to the case you see. And as we say, when you're a student at CPH and you get stuck, you're a student with us for life. So after you graduate, come back, share, learn, and keep growing and help us learn. We hope you don't ever leave us. And that way, that's how we stay ahead of the game when other colleges don't. Francesca, any other questions?
Yep. If your case is not pointing to a cause, do you then go with the remedies that can treat the symptoms?
Okay, right. I'm just going to refer you back to this, ladies and gentlemen. This is page 32 of Ellen's book. If you can't find it, ask someone to screenshot this. Screenshot it on your information devices now. If not, ask me and I'll screenshot it later without infringing Ellen's copyright laws. Buy her book. It's not that expensive. This teaches you how to structure your thinking. So that tells you where to go. If you don't know the cause, it's right there. But then that doesn't mean you go to the totality every time. What we say is try and find the cause, because you pretty much will. And the better you get, the better you will get at finding the cause. And how do you find the cause? You ask the right questions. How do you ask the right questions? Become a detective at taking cases. Don't be a symptom-taking secretary that teaches you nothing about the case. It can point you to the direction by using the 5 elements in the chakra system of the kind of question to ask. The better if you're not got the right information, then you're not asking the right questions. If you stay that in mind, your case taking will get better and better, your analysis will improve, your rubrics will improve, and your success rate with your patients will go through the roof. Next question, please, Francesca.
No further questions, Son.
Okay, the last case of the evening. Deanne, who's been waiting very patiently all evening. I hope she's not forgotten us. Deanne, are you with us?
I'm here.
Hey, how are you?
I'm all right.
Right, you ready?
Sure.
Fire away.
Okay. I have a 38-year-old female, and she's tall, overweight, nails trimmed short, homemaker, homeschooling mama, 5, age 2 to 15, hormone imbalance, endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, heavy painful periods, migraines, which she thinks are hormonal because they came after, I believe, the 5th child. She's hypoglycemic. That was diagnosed while she was in college. Back up, she's had heavy painful periods ever since she started menses when she was 12. She's tired. She said insomnia, but it's really she's a very light sleeper. She has lack of energy and motivation, and which distresses her because she was a self-motivated person before. She has cramps in her feet and hands, sleeps super light. When she took magnesium, she slept soundly and didn't have cramps. However, she stopped taking it because it caused diarrhea. She typically has soft stools. She has an abnormal irregular heartbeat discovered during labor with child number 2, but was told that it's not overly harmful to her. It's just she's got 2 signals firing, telling her heart to beat. And so it's irregular. She has gas and bloating only when she eats restaurant food. And when she's anxious or nervous, she gets knots and cramps in her gut. She feels overwhelmed, has paralyzing anxiety, sad, difficulty focusing and following through, and a lack of joy. And the paralyzing anxiety goes when she goes into a store and there's just too many choices. She finds that difficult. So she was born in the hospital via C-section, had all the childhood vaccines for somebody born in 1985, had a tonsillectomy, cracked head, broke an elbow, sad childhood. Parents are very dysfunctional and still are. Divorced when she was 5 and bounced between parents. She also had an appendectomy when she was 12. Mom is a hoarder, unsafe. The state came in, removed the kids, separated them, and put them all in foster care system. Mom cleaned up her act and got the kids back, but then abandoned the client when she was 17 at a restaurant, just walked out, left, never returned. So she went and lived with her boyfriend at the time's family, but she was not sexually active. She was a virgin on her wedding day. So she was protected from all the situations she was in. Her wisdom teeth were surgically removed. She had dry socket, antibiotics, played college volleyball, broke and dislocated her fingers numerous times, and then was diagnosed as hypoglycemic when she was 20. And then her timeline goes on. You also see she's got a hormone imbalance. She's hypoglycemic. And with that all goes the irregular painful use menses, migraines, muscle weakness and cramps, feels weaker than she should because she was very strong. She's very tall, 6'1". And so that really bothers her because she was very athletic and powerful. So the abnormal irregular heartbeat, tired, overwhelmed, anxiety, depression. No medication. Father was abused as a child. He's been dysfunctional his whole life, never been able to hold down a job for very long. He's diabetic, has psoriasis, lives nearby. Although for the first several years of her marriage, he lived with them. Her mother was sexually abused by her father. She is hypoglycemic as well, has some kind of autoimmune disease, but the daughter does not know what it's called, and she's allergic to quote unquote everything. The maternal grandmother died from cancer and was also diabetic, and the maternal aunt died from cancer.
Okay, so what are we getting from this first page, Deanne?
That we've got ailments from trauma,
Yes.
abandonment, forsaken feelings,
Yes.
anxiety,
Yes.
all of that. Everything is emotion based. Shock when the Department of Human Services came in and took the kids, but just even all the back and forth with the parents and the mom having very poor choices and boyfriends. One of the stepfather sexually assaulted the younger sister, and so my client feels guilty because she wasn't able to protect. She's the older sibling. She's always been the protector, taking care of, assuming the role of adult because her parents were so dysfunctional.
Right.
And so she has everything is mind emotion.
Good. We like it. Even though she's come with everything physical. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Hypoglycemic, blah, blah, blah. Now, sexually abused by father. Who was? The mother was or the child? This patient was?
The mother was.
Did she witness this?
So the mother of my client was sexually abused by what would be my client's grandfather. So you
Got it.
can see where the setup is for the dysfunction, the poor choices. The mom was basically self-destructive in her choices of sexual partners, and all of that set up from the abuse from her own father.
How did this patient feel going through all this in her life?
How does she feel?
Ah.
She knows that this comes from, and this is where I added into my rubrics, anger, general ailments from suppressed, because she says she's no longer angry, she can't do anything about it, blah, blah, blah. But
Okay.
it's
So-
there. And she knows the anxiety and everything is just like a bass note. It's always
Good.
kind of like there. And she has a fear of lack because there wasn't regular food on the table. She grew an inch when she hit college because she finally had regular food. So that's one of her things. She wants to make sure they never run out of food in the house.
What
So-
miasm is that?
Fear, that would be the psychosis.
Fear is psychosis, but when it's a fear of poverty, that's actually a keynote of serenum, the soric miasm, not enough. We have a very soric miasm in not enough security, not enough financial security, not enough food, not enough shelter, not enough stability. So her theme is not enough.
Okay.
That not enough leads to a heightened fear, which is psychotic. So we go from under, not enough, to over, heightened. And we know she's over because she's allergic to bloody everything.
Well,
She's
that's the
over-
mom. That's not her.
Okay, right. Beg your pardon. My mistake. Okay. So she, though, is doing this fear, right? But there's also something you said now. She's a witness to this. So she's ailment from abandonment, ailment from disappointment,
Mhm.
hopeless feelings, mind despair, mind helpless feelings. So these are all the things that are coming out of this case. And the reason I like doing this on this first slide, we're going right back to the first case we did, because if you shared your rubrics, everyone would see them. But this really makes us think without looking at your rubrics. Do you see why we're doing it this way?
Mhm.
So other people think, yeah, I see that. I see that in the case. Or do I see that in the case? Yes, I am. So we're not only learning what to see, we're learning what to look for. She's overwhelmed. And all these feelings of helplessness, and it overwhelms her. And the overwhelming causes anxiety, and anxiety is felt in the heart, which is causing the irregular heartbeats. So we have another rubric, anxiety felt in the heart. Are we seeing that now?
Yeah.
So that's what, so the anxiety in the heart, though, is not the cause. That's the effect of the general lack of unsupport, helplessness, trauma. She's in fight or flight all her life, isn't she?
Yes.
And then she had to grow up quick and become responsible. So we have rubrics like mind responsible, mind cares full of, mind full of worries. Things like calc, carbon, arsenicum come up there. We're not remedy chasing, but they are the main remedies for these rubrics. But we don't chase remedies because in the context of the case, they may not be the right remedies for her, which is why we take 6, 7, or 8 rubrics. Now, just a note on physical particulars and physical generals. Hypoglycemic, okay, it could be a physical particular as well, but migraines, possibly hormonal, that'd be particular. The way we call a physical particular, ladies and gentlemen, if it affects a body part, it's a particular. If it affects the body as a whole, I'm hungry, I'm hot, I'm cold, that's the physical general. If it affects the body part, it's a physical particular. So we can look at that as well. So if she's overwhelmed, paralyzing, anxiety, depression, that might come under mental emotional, which it is. So we've got a case of someone who's highly anxious, highly overwhelmed, and she's getting palpitations, but she's also a little bit overweight now, right? She's lacking energy motivation. You know why? Because ever since she got abandoned and her parents split at 5, she's been living on adrenaline, hasn't she?
Mhm.
So if she's on adrenaline, we have to give what's called the organ support method. We need to support her adrenal glands. And you're at CPH with us now, so I'll share the CPH combo with you later on, and that will adequately support the adrenal glands. And the CPH combo that we do is very important because it's also got a remedy called Caliphos for the nerves and calc carb. Calc carb is one of the major remedies for being overwhelmed and anxious. It's a major what-if remedy, anxiety. If I'm anxious over something that I know about, that's called anticipatory anxiety, arginate, lycopodium, and a few others. If I'm anxious over things in the past, regret, that's things like ignatia and natmure. If I'm anxious when I don't know what I'm even anxious about, that's calc carb. Worry because I'm worried because I don't know what to worry about. So that's already in the adrenal mix, because that's why she's adrenally fatigued. That's going to slow her metabolism down, the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals, along that with the thyroid. Slows her down, makes her gain weight, but it makes her worry, and the worry is causing palpitation in the heart. Chemically, calcium channels, sodium channels are what affects the heartbeat and the signal from the sinoatrial valve node into the heart and make it pump. So when she's getting a regular heartbeat, she's worried, she's a nervous wreck internally. She's living on adrenaline. This is what we need to deal with. So there's a different approach here slightly. And that is then causing an imbalance in the hormones. Because what do our adrenals do? They reabsorb minerals, they sit on the kidneys and the ovaries make our hormones. But it starts from the brain. Follicle stimulating hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone, releases things like folliculinum, oophorinum, estrogen, progesterone. But when I'm stressed, I'm using all that up. There's not enough for my estrogen balance. And the estrogen and the progesterone imbalance is manifesting in my cradle of life. Why? Because I'm uprooted, soric. My root chakra, the genitourinary urinary organs, the uterus are not stable. And this answers the question someone said, which tool do we use in hierarchy? Whichever one's appropriate. Right now, we're not using 5 elements as much, we're using the chakra system. That's also linked directly back to the thyroid, and that slows the metabolism down, which causes the weight gain. So she's stressed, she's tired, she's overweight, she's minerally depleted, and her hormones are all out of balance. Does that kind of give us that impression of what's happening in this case?
Mm-hmm. And just in somebody in the chat said carb for overwhelmed and anxious, you have to have coldness. She is cold. She hates being cold. She likes the heat, the humidity, being outside in sunshine.
Yeah, because carb, if we use the classical homeopaths, they say carb is a fat, fair, flabby, chilly remedy. And if you know someone on hot and cold, it's a very good question to ask in 1 second. Are you a hot person or cold? That actually splits your materia medica in half. So you're funneling down. The questions allow us to funnel down and find. So maybe carb is a remedy she needs, but you're going to be given that in the adrenal mix anyway. That takes that worry off. And that's why when we teach homeopathy this way here, we don't have to chase that magic remedy that will heal, because when we treat and support the organs, once the organs are working functionally, they will reabsorb the minerals. Once the minerals are working properly, they will make the mineral corticoids that affect the rest of the body and regulate the metabolism. Once the metabolism is regulated, her body weight will stabilize. We can add in things like Himalayan Soleil, and with that salt water, for lack of a better description, and we can make it with Celtic salt or sea salt, or in America, kosher salt, which will have iodine in it. And iodine will help the thyroid regulate itself better as well. We could even give them thyroidinum. We talked about this earlier, for therapeutics, for the uterus and for the thyroid when we have uterus issues with weight gain. And thyroidinum and carb complement each other very, very well as remedies. There's another herb, an adaptogenic herb called ashwagandha from the Ayurvedic system of medicine. It's an adaptogenic herb. It acts on the adrenal glands and it acts on the thyroid. Adaptogenic meaning if the thyroid is underactive, it will speed it up. If it's overactive, it will downregulate it. These are fantastic herbs to give as well. And this is the way we teach homeopathy here, holistically. You use the tools you need to help your patient get better. Any other comments or questions on this page before we look at your rep work, dear?
Nope.
Shall we go on to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
So we had all this. Do you want to go through this again, or have we covered most of it?
Well, she married and root canal, so you got that in there. She has lots of mercury fillings. So depression occurred after the birth of her 3rd child, and it lasted for 4 years. And then blood sugar issues. And then she tried fertility treatments. That's when or exploratory surgery. That's when she found out she had endometriosis and polycystic ovary syndrome. And she took the Plexus, which is a multi-level marketing company, pink drink, in order to try to stabilize her blood sugar. That lasted for a couple of years, but then her blood sugar started getting wonky again. So really dropping. And so she's been on this Amare's, was on it for a time, but she's not now. She unexpectedly, a couple of years ago, her face became paralyzed while at camp and was taken to the emergency room and the doctor diagnosed it as Bell's palsy. And it's mostly resolved. She still has an eye that twitches, but when she did take magnesium, that was better. So she thinks that's mostly resolved.
Okay, well, you can give magnesium back. And you said if she took it as a supplement to give her diarrhea, give it as a remedy. You have magnesium muriaticum, MagFos.
And that's what I had said, put MagFos in her
MagFos.
water.
Yeah. So we can give it that way as a tissue salt, as a remedy. We can give it as a supplement. If the supplement's causing diarrhea, that might mean she's using too much MagFos. And here's the funny thing when you're depleting magnesium. Calcium and magnesium exist in the body in a 2-to-1 ratio. So when you need magnesium, you can bet your bottom dollar that the patient needs calc carb.
Okay.
So we know she's a calc carb patient. It's evident in the fact she needs magnesium. And one of the greatest supplements in the world that has magnesium in 2-to-1 ratio are almonds. People nowadays want almond milk and all sorts of things now because cow's milk isn't good enough anymore, apparently. But why not just eat almonds? Almonds, they give you zinc and selenium, which is also in a CPH adrenal mix. They give you much needed fiber, and they give you the magnesium and the calcium you need in the exact ratio. A handful of almonds a day gives you all the magnesium you need. It might not be as much as a 400 milligrams active magnesium, but it's more it's God's pharmacy. It works.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to have supplements. And sometimes we have people with different income levels. They can't afford expensive supplements, but they can go get a bag of almonds and have a handful of almonds every day. This is how people did it without supplements. When supplements didn't exist, we went to nature and took things from God's earth. That's the way it works. Ellen used to say, you want to trust God's pharmacy or man's? So we always have this hunt for the most perfect supplement company. Go back to organic nature first, then do supplements second. So that's what I would suggest here. It will not give her diarrhea. It will keep her bowels clean with the fiber in the almonds, but it will give her other things that you don't get in a supplement, like the zinc and selenium. The zinc and selenium are needed to make thyroid and regulate the hormones. They're needed to make our sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. They're trace elements, but they're so important because without that, it's like having a little pinch of salt in a dish. Without that pinch of salt, the dish tastes bland. So it's not the quantity, but it's the quality of the minerals that we're using. That's what she needs. She needs to remineralize herself. You know why? Because when we're adrenally fatigued, they affect the kidneys. And what do the kidneys do? Reabsorb minerals. And that's exactly, so this is a case of mineral deficiency here due to all the stress she's been at a young age. Does that make sense?
Yep. And I had actually told her that she should, basically from your body's many cries for water, that she needed to take an 1/8 teaspoon of Himalayan salt for every 20 ounces of water she drinks. So
perfect. I say that to people. I say every time you get a bottle of water and get in yours, put a little teaspoon of salt in there and drink it. But at first it tastes salty. When your salt rebalances, it doesn't taste salty anymore.
mhm.
That's when you know you're adequately hydrated, but adequately remineralized. That remineralization affects our cycles, the menses, everything. And I say this at CPH. We take vitamins and minerals or vitamins. Minerals can act in the absence of vitamins, but vitamins cannot act in the absence of minerals. So minerals come first, vitamins come second. So we always say remineralize the body first, then worry about your vitamins. And that's where Himalayan salt is so powerful. Okay, have you got another slide with your rep work?
Yep.
You had all this, abandoned anxiety, and from use the totality method. Good, well done. Reverse order using the timeline. That's a bit of a complex prescription there, Deanne. Considering you came from APH, what's going on? You're enjoying CPH a bit too much, I think.
So with the reading the Narayani book, and the reason why I chose those were because it hits so much on the on my rubrics and all my remedy selections. With the the Narayani blood sugar balance, she recommended fear balance and depression balance, which all goes together. And then the female balance, because it hits so many of these remedies that are show up not the lycopodium, but the carcinosin sepia. I need to add silica to that bottom for that carcnux thuya and add silica to that. Because that's also going to hit on her hypoglycemia. But the pulsatilla, the aurum metallicum, thuya, lachesis, josemium, nux, argentum nitricum, arsenicum, simicifuga, and aconite. So you're hitting all of those mental, emotional ones that also come up. And then the bone, I put that in there because of her propensity for breaking bones. And because I could see that she's minerally deficient. And she needs that strength, and her teeth have been cracking and
Okay.
all that. So that's why I chose what I did. And I also added in, she needs to see an Atlas orthogonal chiropractor to get things straightened out. Because if you have a kink in your neck, that can cut off the flow, and then you're more prone to depression anyway. As I said, the Mag Phos to her water, I had already told her about consuming the Himalayan salt. And then for that really light sleeping to help her calm her mind so she's not always working on her lists and being really busy. That's why I said the coffee accruta 200C twice daily. And that's an as needed thing. So once that straightens out, then she drops that.
Okay. I'm just going to your rep work here. What we've got, I'm just going to go backwards one slide, 1 second. So we've got a lot of Nariani combos here, which is, is what you're choosing to do. These are, if we look at the blood sugar, the fear balance, these are all the effects, right? The fear is the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Blood sugar, the depression, these are the effects, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in fear, the fear sits above the kidneys. The kidneys and the genitourinary organs, if we're doing the 5 elements, is what's affecting all the endometriosis and everything, right? The genitourinary areas. Her base chakra, she's in fear, no stability in her life. She needs grounding, for lack of a better word. So we've got a lot of Narianis going, and the Narianis have many, many combos. So we're almost trying everything but the kitchen sink here. You've got your remedies that you've rep for up there. Abandonment feelings, shock, ailments, depression, sadness, that's fine. That's the rep what you're using. You don't need as many physical particulars in here, but you've got them in, use the totality method. There's another remedy, a meditative proven remedy that helps clear up things like this. It's called Lotus. It's known as the universal healer. So adding Lotus as a 50 ml alongside this, and that will help clear this pattern, help release her fear. Fear, when we think of fear, is had a fright, give aconite. Now, here's the interesting thing with homeopathy, why it's amazing. When we read aconite, aconite is for acute fear. When you've been in fear the whole of your life, you read the last line in Murphy's Materia Medica, it says the chronic of aconite is sulfur. And what do we know about sulfur? It's Hahnemann's greatest anti-psoric. And why is psoric? Not enough fear, poverty, lack of. But you think, well, I can't use sulfur because she's a chilly person. Sulfur, calc, and lycopodium are the 3 great anti-psorics in Hahnemann's repertory. So it's no surprise that lycopodium comes up here as well. They're psoric remedies. So we don't need to treat them miasmatically because the remedy lycopodium is a psoric miasmatic remedy as well, as is calc, who's chilly. But because she's chilly and not hot, sulfur wouldn't be appropriate. So what is the psoric miasmatic remedy? Sorinum. You might want to give a sorinum. That will sort and balance the base chakra like you will not believe. Sorinum's keynotes: chilly, fear of poverty, fear of the future, hoarding, fear, 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 worry, worry, worry. And it causes debility and exhaustion. So sorinum in this instance would be a very powerful remedy to give. And if you're giving all this 3 times a day, at the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, stop all these remedies. There's a hell of a lot to take for a person. Just say take sorinum. 10M Saturday, 10M Sunday, bang. Then you're using it intercurrently. And the layers method teaches that the miasm runs through and weaves through all the layers like a thread. Does that make sense?
Sure. So you just said to only take sorinum once a week, 10M on
Sundays. It gives the patient a break from taking all these multiple doses, multiple times. They're living on pills and 4 pills. Saturday, take it once. Sunday, take it once, twice. Then they have a mental and physical break from taking all remedies. And that helps to lift and shift the miasm, which is the psoric miasm, not enough. The base chakra, the grounding, the rooting that she's never had her whole life.
So would you do the lycopodium in a high as well?
You can choose your lycopodium because she's had it long time. She's what, 40 now, right? Or 38.
Yep.
And this happens in child. It's you can go low and slow. Give lycopodium 200C once a day.
So would you cut out the blood sugar, the Narianis, or what?
If you're asking me, I would. I very rarely, if at all, treat effects.
Okay.
Because as we said, once the vital force realigns itself, it will realign the rest of the body. I am going to suggest for yourself and those listening, go back and re-rep for this. Mind overwhelmed, mind cares, mindful responsibility. Add it to some of these rubrics, but then delete the rubrics out to have no more than 9, as we teach at CPH. See what your rep book does. I remember a story, I think it was in one of Ellen's audios when she was learning 20 odd years ago. She did a case about 5 or 7 times. She re-repped and re-repped. She went bingo. So sometimes we have to re-rep. And that helps us clarify the actual case and what are we exactly trying to figure out here. Because we use the totality, but we also know the cause here. So you think, right, I'll use the classical repertorization, 5 mental emotional. Forget the physical particulars and generals. And that teaches us and forces us to limit our rubrics. That's how we really learn. What are the real big rocks that makes the difference in this case? Nothing wrong with your prescription. A little bit complex if you ask me directly, but simplify it. Less is more. Simplify your rep work and see what you come up with. And that will challenge you. You think, okay, yeah, I can do this. We did it with I think with Lisa, we had 3 or 4 rubrics, boom, we had phosphorus come up. And when we look at that, there's a great sense of satisfaction, ladies and gentlemen, when we force ourselves to re-rep. And when we do these cases and witness these, as we have done this evening, we don't just look at the patient, the student or the colleague presenting their case and say, well, let's see what they did. We should be repping this stuff down ourselves behind the scenes, thinking, oh my gosh, for those of you who not yet seen patients, you've just had 4 patients that you can work on yourself, polish your rep skills. So don't just make Deanne or Lisa do their work or whatever, or Erica. Do it, share it on the groups. Say, look, I've worked away. This is what I come up with. That helps us all learn and grow together. So somebody rep for them ailments from responsibility, overwork, and add to these. Maybe take out the cysts and the menses because these effects. Then see what remedies come up. You might find calc-carb there, or it might just strengthen lycopodium further. This is also why we say don't just take the top remedy, compare the top 2 or 3. Because if sulfur and calc-carb came up, but the person is chilly, sulfur is not the remedy for that patient. And that's why we say don't just take the one with the highest score, which is what every other homeopathic school teaches us. Choose the one out the top 3 that is most relevant to the case. It doesn't have to be an exact fit and tick every box. Why? Because all it's doing is realigning the vital force. Once the vital force gets realigned, it will do the rest. Does that make sense? Deanna, are you happy with them comments?
What would you do the Lotus 50M frequency?
Well, you know what? Lotus, if you want to give Lotus and Serenum together intercurrently, that's a great way to do it. That removes the poverty and helps heal her at a deep soul level. 10M or 50M Saturday, Sunday, done. And isn't it exciting that you've come from a different school of thinking and you're absolutely perfectly happy with 50Ms nowadays? And that just shows how much you've grown so rapidly to advance your own homeopathy the way you want to practice it with your patients.
Well, to be honest, with her fear and everything, I would have, my initial inclination would be aconite 10 mm at night before bed.
But see, this is what we're saying. When aconite is the chronic, and the chronic of aconite is sulfur, and yet sulfur is the psoric remedy, but it's the hot one. You use the cold one, which is either calc-carb or the actual miasmatic no-sod itself, which is Serenum. Read up Serenum, and you think, oh my gosh, this fits my patient.
And
Except
Serenum, therefore,
Serenum people are normally skinny and wiry, like Nexamomic and Natmure types. So then you think, why? That's how we decide between Serenum and calc-carb. And this is the process of elimination you go. Once you get to the rep work and you read your materia medica this way, not to memorize it, but say, does this fit my patient and what I'm seeing? If it doesn't, it guides you to the next remedy. That's how you learn your MapMed. Calc-carb is a fantastic remedy for endometriosis and everything. Why? It balances out the MAG ratio. We know calc-carb is needed. But if you give it the adrenal mix, calc-carb's already in there, so you don't need to give calc-carb. Because you see, this is what I'm saying. The way we structured the programs and the methodology we use here, it covers your bases adequately. Just like the Nux carc through your silica, you're doing your vaccine detox, but you've got your Nux and carcinosin, so you're going to unsuppress your patient. If If you've got a calc carb in your adrenal mix and she's a calc carb patient, you're thinking, well, I'm done. So all I need to do is adrenal mix and Himalayan saline. Yes, it really can be that easy. Take away the worry, take away the fear, it'll rebalance the mag, and the rest of the body will heal itself. Less is more.
Yep. So
And
the adrenal
that's
mix, is that,
you're a
in the
CPH
spread-
student. You're a CPH, you'll see that on a HANA later. Someone will
Well,
share.
I've seen, I have the spreadsheet, so
you
is
know
but I can't remember, is the potency already listed on there?
You can choose the potency how you want. I often use a CPH mix, this adrenal mix, at 30C.
Okay,
When the patient's overly exhausted, I'll use it at 200C. Now, a word on adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue can lead to chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic fatigue syndrome can lead to fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia can lead to death. So we can see what the prognosis of a patient when they don't deal with this. In her case, it could lead to more cysts, endometriosis, PCOS. It could lead to uterine or cervical cancer and death. So when we heal people at this level, we actually literally are saving lives because we can see where the patient is ending. And when we graduate here, we ask our students to make a prognosis as well as a diagnosis. What is happening? What will happen if you do nothing? And that's very important because then you can see down the line and predict it. I did it with my own father when my mother died. He was all alone. He was angry. I said, you're going to get gallstones if you're not careful. 6 months later, he had gallstones. He's fat, fair, flabby. I gave him calc carb. 3 months later, gallstones disappeared. And he goes, how did you know? I said, that's what I do for a living. Not that he'd recognize it. Parents very rarely do. But there you go. So you can make a prognosis, and that enables you to look beyond into where they're headed. And this lady's headed for disaster. She's only a young lady at the moment. What do you think is going to happen when menopause hits her in 10, 15 years? She's going to be a mess. So we've got to rebalance her. Why? Because when the menopause occurs, the ovaries say, right, we're going to retire. Dear adrenals, please carry on for the rest of her life. And the adrenal glands say, hang on a minute. We haven't had to work since she was 13 when the menses started. Now you want us to work when she had a whole lifetime of stress? They're not prepared. And that causes menopausal symptoms. Her adrenals are already fatigued. She's in for a really rough ride in 10 years' time. This is why we've got her at now. So that's what we mean by prognosis. Does that make sense?
yes,
Good. Any other questions?
not for me.
Please, you or somebody else on the group, please re-rep this. This is a fascinating case. I can't wait to see the rep work. When we take out the physical particulars, add a few of the responsibility ones. Let's see what comes up. And it's always good to play around with rubrics. We learn so much from it. Right.
Well, like I had said in my email to you, I deleted several of my mind rubrics.
I know you did.
Because I had a bunch more in the mind.
I know you said this is why I'm laughing, because I know you did well to get here. But then have another go and that will sharpen it further. We're refining our skills, idiot. Right. Sarah, Francesca, if any of you co-hosts with me are awake this evening, are any more questions there before I retire?
One quick one, Som. Can you give any further explanation with regards to the ovaries and adrenal connection?
I'll try it again one more time. Okay, the ovaries kick into place during puberty when a girl reaches puberty, and up until then, the adrenals make estrogen, progesterone in small amounts and a tiny amount of testosterone. When menses start, the ovaries say, we've got it from here. We'll manage the genitourinary tract, the fallopian tubes, the uterus lining. We will take it from here and have our first bleed. Then the adrenals say, great, you carry on with that. We will deal with the rest of life. Aldosterone, angiotensin, vasopressin, cortisol, histamine, the other glucocorticoids, all the other hormones they make, renin. So the adrenals carry on with that. The woman goes through life. Life happens. Then when the ovaries say, right, we are now retired, we're going to shut down for good, and they call it the menopause. Menopause, the menses are paused, stopped. Then they say, right, adrenal glands, can you carry on making the estrogen and progesterone? And the adrenals say, hang on, we're already fatigued from all the crap and stress I've had in life. Now you want me to start making estrogen and progesterone again? We're not ready. So like trying to start a cold car on a cart start, that shunting and bumping around is what causes the hot flushes and the swings and everything in menopause symptoms, because the adrenals aren't ready to take over for the second half of life. So when we balance the adrenals, people have a smooth and happy menopause. They don't even feel it. They sail through it as they should sail through periods. They should come, they should go, they should not be cramping. Period pain is now become a commonly accepted phenomenon. You go to third world countries, women walk around, they're just, again, bleeding, but then they're not debilitated for 3 days on the bed. So this is when the adrenals and the ovaries are all out of sync. When we're angry and we're frustrated or we take drugs, we block our liver. Our liver recycles our hormones. Our liver is the factory of the body. Kidneys are the filter. So the liver recycles all the cortisol, all the estrogen and progesterone and takes it back to pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is a precursor of our sex hormones. If we don't, and that makes progesterone. If we don't have enough progesterone, we get what's called estrogen dominance. That can cause endometriosis, hirsutism, anger, and the rest of it. So this is intricate balance between the adrenals, the ovaries, and the liver, and the recycling of these called steroid hormones, cholesterol hormones, at the base of it. So when a doctor tells us we lower your cholesterol, why are we seeing so many of these issues? Have a healthy cholesterol level. Cholesterol makes all our sex hormones. It makes our myelin sheath in our nerves, without which we'll get multiple sclerosis. Which is also why if you read cholesterol levels, there's not a range. No country in the world gives you a range what your cholesterol should be, and it's just a number. It's too high. Really? Who says? That's like telling someone their shoe size is too big. Ignore what the doctors tell you. They don't get it right. And in this instance, very wrong. So this is the ingredients and the nutrition that goes into the body, which makes the hormones that we need to regulate ourselves and function properly. We talk a lot about it at CPH when we do women's health. We talk about it on our webinars. It may be that we'll do a webinar on endocrinology one day. But I think after nearly 3 hours of doing cases, that's enough. If you want to pick it up later, we'll pick it up in the group chats. But that's the delicate balance, the dialogue and the dance that the kidneys, the adrenals, and the ovaries have. Hopefully that helps. Any other questions?
No, Som, no more questions.
You know what? I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed listening. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording now. And if you enjoyed it, please feed back to your colleagues. And thank you all for participating, especially the 4 people who presented the cases. It takes great guts to do that. Thank you very, very much and very, very well done. And from us in the UK, have a very good evening. Good night. We'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye for now.